I'd like to welcome everyone to the Policy Personnel Legal Education Program meeting. Mrs. Johnston is en route, and we will be starting with education and programs, but so as not to delay everyone, we wanted to get started now, and she'll join when she gets here. So with that, may we have the roll call, please?
Charles here somewhere.
Okay, and there's no one on Zoom, is my understanding.
Okay.
All right, and if you could join me, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I would like to announce that the board will be meeting in executive session following this meeting for a student legal matter. And with that, Dr. Dandridge, we'll turn it over to you. We have no residents' request to address the board. So Dr. Dandridge, if you'd like to proceed with the Wit and Wisdom update.
Great. Thank you. So this evening we have an update on the progress of our Wit and Wisdom implementation. As you know, we are in the first year of the elementary ELA implementation of that program. So we brought together some staff members to share some reflections, and Mr. Hoffman and I have some pieces to go through. So I will have them all come forward, and feel free to take a seat up here and sit around some of the microphones as you are pulled forward. You have the, yeah. Thank you all.
So Dr. Dandridge and I figured it would be good for you to hear from some of our teachers who are in the trenches working with kids every day this evening. So I have several teachers who are here tonight, another one who couldn't come but sent a statement that she gave to me to read. So first up, Mr. Graham will go to the next slide. We have the 3 third grade teachers from Mountville, Sheridan Dominguez, Ashley Moyer, and Rachel Smith. So I'll turn it over to them.
Good evening, everyone. We're the team from Mountville Elementary School, like Ethan already said. Over the past 2 years, our experience with the Wit and Wisdom program has been exciting and filled with a lot of fun for both our students and us as educators. We've seen a noticeable shift in student engagement, curiosity, and the depth of understanding across all of the content areas by using this program. We found that all of our students, regardless of their reading and writing abilities, can grasp and apply the knowledge they gain through each of the modules. This program provides a variety of rich learning experiences, ensuring that every student has access to meaningful learning and the opportunity to succeed. One of our most exciting ways that we brought learning to life is through our book tasting events. That's how we start each module. These have quickly become the students' favorite. We, yes, all 3 of us, we dress up to match the theme of the module like we are tonight. And the students preview the upcoming text. They watch book trailers, they do Notice and Wonders about the book, and they enjoy some themed snacks that relate to what we're learning. It's a joyful, immersive way to launch each module and build excitement for what's to come. To extend that engagement, we also transform our 3rd grade hallway to reflect what we are learning. In Module 1, Shadows of Sea Creatures swim across our ceiling lights, making students feel like they're exploring the deep sea. In Module 2, they walk among the planets, stars, and our very own craggy moon. For Module 3, we have flags from all around the world lining our hallway, celebrating all the places where people have immigrated to America from.
Each module is brought to life with a didactic wall panel that showcases.
Microphone over a little bit.
Sure. Better. All right. That showcases student artwork and their written responses to the module's focusing question task. It's a space where student thinking is celebrated and shared with the entire school community. Thanks to the support of the Hemfield Foundation, our students have had a wonderful opportunity this year to explore books that directly connect to each of the modules. This has not only deepened their understanding, but also sparked a greater curiosity and engagement with every topic we've studied. We've also brought in guest speakers to build our students' real-world connections. A local scientist from Millersville University shared her discovery of the ghost shark during Module 1. Students were able to hold preserved sharks and other ocean life. Mr. Donato also visited our third graders during Module 2 to share his experience as a teen during the Apollo 11 mission. It was kind of funny because some of our students actually thought you were a real life astronaut when you came to share. So we had to clarify a little that you weren't Neil Armstrong. As you can imagine, the third graders had many questions for him. And this spring, our Wit and Wisdom coach, Jane, will be sharing her family's immigration story during Module 3, making the stories in our books feel more real and relevant.
One of the most unforgettable moments this year was when our students watched the most recent SpaceX splashdown and recognized vocabulary from the book Moonshot. Their faces lit up as they made those connections, proof that the learning was meaningful and lasting. We're so proud of how Wit and Wisdom has enriched our classrooms and enhanced student learning. It's helped our students become more thoughtful readers, deeper thinkers, and more connected learners, and we're just getting started. Thank you for picking this program and going with our recommendation last year. We love getting the students excited about what they're learning and enjoy watching their excitement each day.
Great. And then we have next Sarah Bear, who is a kindergarten teacher at Farmdale. Sarah, this is her first year in kindergarten as well. She had been the instructional support teacher at Farmdale for many years before that. So this was new ELA curriculum, new experience in kindergarten. So her perspective is also great as we launch into this first year of Wit and Wisdom. So Mike, if you want to go to the next slide, there's some photos there from Sarah.
So, yes, although I've been at Hempfield for 24 years, I turned the corner and decided to start teaching kindergarten this past year, which has been amazing on so many levels. And you're a tough act to follow, so I'm a little intimidated, but I will just share my experience. You know, going into kindergarten, having a new curriculum and learning so much, I was on an equal playing field because Wit and Wisdom was new for everybody, you know, my colleague. So we just dove in, and the first part of my journey, of course, started at home with the planning, which I had heard so much about and was so nervous, and just got that Module 1 book out, and I was like, here we go. Bailey, my mini golden doodle up there, was my forever partner because I really needed to spend a lot of time with that module, and I needed to do a lot of reading. I'm a visual learner and a visual person, and there's not any colors in the manual. There's not any arrows or drawings or things like that. So I put that all in the manual myself to help myself. So early on, I had sent this picture to Jason and Kim because I was really kind of feeling like Bailey was right in the trenches with me. So that was the first part of my journey. Lots of handwritten notes, lots of Post-its, and lots of collaborating with the professionals here at Hempfield and the coaches, like you guys had said. So after the planning came the implementation of the lessons. And I just feel the same as you all have said. Wit and Wisdom quickly became the best part of my day of teaching kindergarten. It's still my most favorite part of the day. I love the student-teacher interaction. I love the literature. The kids love it. The expectations are high for all learners. And as you have said, a really cool part of this is one of my students here. She's just your role model student. She loves to learn. She's curious. She's always asking questions. We had read Miss Bindergarten's first day of kindergarten as part of Module 1 because we were waiting for another book to come in. And this student here, she went home and was so excited about this book, and she found Miss Bindergarten celebrates the last day of kindergarten and insisted on reading it before the last day of kindergarten. But it was just so cool. And her parents just said she is coming home and talking about books and wondering and saying she's curious. And for me as a teacher, it was so rewarding to hear that from not only the student, but the parents. Next came the next slide. Yeah. Here's another one of my students who is showing and doing things that I never thought he could do. He recently raised his hand during one of the modules, and he is a student who has speech and language, and he had the most profound thing to share with the class. I'm seeing things come from students that I never really thought possible, and having that bar high for all is just really, really cool to see. And then lastly, part of what the kids love to do in kindergarten is share their work. And they have the focusing question tasks at the end of the modules or sometimes in between. And we often will sit in a circle and they will share their work and talk about it. And then we also have a share table, and you can't really see close up, but they're writing multiple sentences here in kindergarten. Here we are, punctuation, detailed pictures. It's just really neat to see what they're doing. And I am so thankful to be a part of this. And I'm also thankful for the support that the district provided, as well as the coaches, because things that they teach me, they come in my classroom during a lesson and just join in. And they're teaching me hand signals to use with the kids. And it's just such a vibrant, wonderful curriculum. So I'm thankful to be a part of it, and I'm thankful to be here tonight.
Thanks, Sarah.
You bet.
Next slide. Elise Copenhaver is a second grade teacher at Farmdale. She was unable to be here tonight. This is her first year in second grade. She was previously a third grade teacher, but she sent this statement that she asked me to read for you. She says, I've enjoyed implementing the Wit and Wisdom curriculum this year. While it is intense and requires a lot of planning, as Sarah mentioned, the program really hits many reading and writing skills in a cohesive manner. It's drastically different from the piecemeal instruction we were using through the reading and writing workshop method. I love that the reading, writing, grammar, and vocabulary activities are all connected. I also love that the GEODS program allows for codable practice to connect the content of Wit and Wisdom to the phonics patterns we study in Foundations. The amount of modeling and guided practice with content that students are familiar with through repeated practice allows for them to find success at many levels. My students who struggle with writing are given opportunities consistently to talk and engage with their peers through partner work, which helps to develop their confidence. I know that next year will be even better, as students will have knowledge of the structure of the curriculum coming into second grade. I moved from third grade to second grade this past year, and I can say that my current second graders are stronger writers than many of my third graders were at this point in the year last year. I think that over time, Hempfield will benefit greatly from using the Wit and Wisdom program. And then last we have Steph Fitzgerald. This is Steph's third year using Wit and Wisdom. So we've had perspectives from first year, second year, and third year people here tonight, which gives you kind of a glance across the spectrum. So Steph is fourth grade at Centerville, and I'll turn things over to her.
Hi there, good evening. Over the past 3 years, I've had the privilege of watching my fourth grade students grow, not just as learners, but as readers and writers. And so much of that growth has come from our work with the Wit and Wisdom program. At the start of this journey, many of my students were hesitant writers with varying instructional backgrounds. Some struggled to get their ideas on paper, while others weren't sure how to organize their thoughts or find the right words to express themselves. But Wit and Wisdom has provided us with the background knowledge, the tools, and the confidence to face those challenges head on. Through carefully chosen texts and meaningful conversations, my students have learned to look closely at what they read and ask big questions. Questions like, what does it mean to have a great heart? How does the setting affect characters or speakers in a text? And why is it important to understand all sides of a story? These specific types of questions have encouraged my students to think deeply, to reflect upon their knowledge, and to connect personally with what they're reading. And because of that, they're beginning to see writing not just as a task to complete, but as a way to share their thinking, their opinions, and their creativity with the world. One of our favorite fourth grade moments this year happened after we finished reading Hatchet by Gary Paulson in Module 2. Students made powerful connections between Brian's great heart and our essential question from Module 1, reflecting on how Brian's resilience and personal growth showed what it truly means to have strength in the face of challenges. Several of our students were also so engaged with Hatchet that they chose to read Brian's Winter, the sequel, on their own. Later, during our Module 3 book tasting, our students immediately recognized Gary Paulson's name on another book and were genuinely excited to make that connection. Moments like these show that Wit and Wisdom is helping to grow readers who are curious, motivated, and deeply connected with what they're reading. This year, I've had my first group of fourth graders who experienced Wit and Wisdom in third grade. From the very first day, they were already familiar with the learning routines, the expectations, and our approach to texts, which allowed us to hit the ground running. For the first time, we had a class with a shared instructional foundation. And that consistency has made a noticeable difference, not only for them as learners, but also for us as teachers. We've spent less time filling gaps and more time advancing student skills. Our students are now better equipped to tackle text-dependent analysis questions, fostering a deeper understanding of the text. This skill set also prepares them to write the TDAs expected on the PSSAs next week. Additionally, they continue to communicate their newfound knowledge through a variety of methods, including reading, writing, speaking, and listening. They've participated in gallery walks, graffiti walls, tableaus, Socratic seminars, and chalk talks. In a little bit, you'll be able to see one of our Socratic seminars in action from Mrs. Anderson's classroom across the hall. I've seen students grow from writing a few short sentences to crafting thoughtful multi-paragraph essays, like you see Emmanuel doing on the right side there. They're even developing a sense of voice and style. Many of my students now engage in the revision process before submitting their work, demonstrating an understanding that effective writing requires reflection and refinement. And they've begun to truly take ownership of their words, using vocabulary from our lessons, experimenting with sentence structure, and most importantly, writing with purpose. Wit and Wisdom challenges them, and they're starting to rise to meet that challenge. Today, I see more students who can think critically, write with clarity, and communicate with impact. That growth is something they'll carry with them well beyond our classroom. Thank you for trusting us with the choice of this program, and for trusting us as educators to guide our students through it. I've been deeply impressed by how my colleagues have come together to share ideas, to ask questions, and to support one another throughout this first year of implementation. While it's certainly been challenging, the experience has been so incredibly rewarding.
All right, so thanks to all of our teachers for joining us tonight. You're welcome to stay here if you'd like, or head back to your seat. So we wanted to get that perspective for you. Then we'll head into some other topics here on the next slide. We want to talk a little bit to you about professional development. I know we've given some updates about this before, but all of our teachers who had not piloted Wit and Wisdom did go through 2 days of training over the summer. All of our teachers, including those who did the pilot, were involved in a day and a half of collaboration. So that allowed our pilot teachers to share some of their learnings from their pilot years with their colleagues. We had training for special education teachers and our IST teachers during the summer. And then, as our teachers mentioned, we've had 2 coaches from Great Minds who have been with us all year, providing embedded coaching in classrooms. Not only have they been in teachers' classrooms, but they've also been doing walkthroughs with principals, so that next year when we do not have those coaches, our principals know how to supervise and evaluate lessons from the Wit and Wisdom program.
So the excitement and the energy of the program and use in the classroom should be evident by the fact that when Jason and I were putting this together, I said it might be nice to have some teacher voice in the presentation. And I said, but it's the Thursday before a long weekend. I'm not really sure if we'll be able to get anyone out. And the response has been tremendous. People volunteering to come and share their experiences and excitement for using the program. So we're appreciative and thankful of everyone who did come out this evening. The monitoring of growth is really important to us, but really when we are talking about the implementation of a new program, we are focused on more than just the numbers, and we'll have a little bit of that at the end. We're really looking at how the program is being used in the classroom. Is it being used with fidelity? And where are our staff in their understanding of how the pieces fit together? And Wit and Wisdom has given this guide to us to kind of frame that We have a majority, most of our staff, I would say, are in the learn phase. And you see here one of any implementation is typically all about understanding all of the components of a program, how they fit together, and how they can be used in the classroom. Anytime you use something for the first time, there's a whole lot of learning that goes on. The teachers who are even in our second and third year of using this program are still scratching the surface and are starting to move from learn to deepen, which is where they can anticipate a little better the unit arcs and the vocabulary and where students might stumble or trip and how they can best support them. And really, what we hope to see within 3 to 5 years of all of our staff using this is a strong move to the know phase, which is really where you're able to anticipate the students' needs, being able to strategically make decisions about the program based on your knowledge over the past couple of years, but also where you anticipate the students are going to go. So we've been using this model with our staff and with our administrators that has come from the coaches at Wit and Wisdom. And they have worked with our principals at identifying some indicators and some look-fors when they get into the classroom, both for teacher actions, but also student actions, so that they can identify, really where these teachers or these students are in the learning process, and what are some coaching tips that they can use to help move them into the deepen or the know phase. Our coaches have been able to walk with our principals hand in hand into the classroom and do some guided coaching experiences and debrief afterwards, not only with the principals, but also with the staff members to talk about what went well, what they could redo the next time that they go through this lesson. And a lot of time talking about pacing and, some activities that maybe the book had identified, 5 minutes on, maybe went 15 minutes because the conversation was so rich. Well, how do we make sure that we are following those pacing guides so that we're not missing anything on the back end? So a lot of work going into those walkthroughs. Very appreciative of the coaches who have been with us throughout the year and have been providing valuable feedback, not only to our staff, but our principals who will then be overtaking that implementation in the following years.
So, Dr. Dandridge, I'm sorry, I have some questions for the faculty members who are here.
Do you want them to come and sit
Yes.
back up? Okay.
What, could we just hold all the questions
Yeah,
to the
well-
end? I think that would be more respectful of everybody to get through the presentation.
There,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
There are some other examples that they're going to be sharing that are going to be seen throughout the presentation. If your questions go to something specifically that you saw now.
No, it goes more to what we just talked about.
Okay.
I want to better understand how the flexibility that the faculty are being given, because one concern that the board expressed was whether the faculty would still feel empowered to
Sure.
and to use, and that's why I want their input on. So if you can come back up, please.
To say, I'm sorry I was late because looking at how you're dressed, I'm really sorry I missed it.
No, and you were probably prepped that when we do these presentations, we just sort of jump in whenever the board jumps in. But when all of this was being piloted, one of the questions that came up from myself, several other board members, was there was some concern that both Savas and Wit and Wisdom were overly structured, and that it would take away some of the art from your craft, and that you would be sort of given something and say, teach this, as opposed to retaining your professional discretion to adjust the lessons as you saw fit. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on where we are in that continuum.
Well, I can only speak for myself, but I feel like it has enhanced my craft because it
Okay.
gives me the foundation of what I need to teach. And then how I deliver it to my students, it gives me the roadmap, but every teacher is going to bring their own style. Third grade at Mountville is great about dressing up for book tastings. That's not something that's in a manual. They're bringing that because they know it's what their students are going to need to get engaged. Decorating hallways, changing the pacing of a lesson because you feel like your students just aren't getting it. That's all something that we do on the regular. It's not something that we are held back from because of using a program. The program just gives us the foundation for us to bounce from, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I also feel that even though we are using this program, I'm able to pull other things that are related to the topic, and that just helps everyone have a stronger background and more students are successful. Because if the kids have that background knowledge, that foundation, then I can pull things that they need to work on. So during my core time, yes, I follow the manual, but then I also have that freedom during intervention, or if we have an extra 15 minutes where I can support those kids that need it.
Thank you.
Oh, me, okay. I think one of the interesting facts was when the school board members were doing walkthroughs during piloting. And you, Mr. Donato was in our room when we were talking about the Apollo 11 mission. And we paused the lesson as a teachable moment because he was able to speak with that to that. So we had that like firsthand account of his experiences, and it really helped to engage our students further, which is why we invited him back a second time to share. So we're able to pivot if we need to.
Mr. Donato has experiences with the Apollo 11 mission. I want to hear this at some point in my life.
Yeah, we're not going to. Remember, there's only 3 of board members here that were alive at that.
I can still tell you exactly where I was when I was doing that.
Yeah, I can remember where I was when that happened.
I'm good.
Sorry.
Mr. Peter,
Not at all.
Mr. Peter, just to add to this, I can't specifically say for Wit and Wisdom because I don't think I've ever been in 3 classrooms all at the same time, but I remember it was either this year or last year, Dr. Dandridge and I were touring LPC, and we happened to go into 3 different 3rd grade rooms that they were on math at that time. And there were, you know, again, it's a program, just like Wit and Wisdom. And there were 3 different approaches that were going on in there. Just again, just because it's a program does not mean, even though they may agree to, you know, dress like this. I think I witnessed one time going through the beginning when you had all the kids down for that. But again, if you go in, one teacher may be slightly ahead of the lesson or doing it a different way. They are it doesn't stifle their freedom. It really is giving us some structure, because I do remember teaching from 1st grade be more or less do it on your own method.
And it also gives us time as educators to collaborate with each other about the lessons. So I'm not doing one thing, she's not doing another, and then Sharon and doing something else. We sit down and talk at lunch all the time about, hey, how did that part of the lesson go? Is there something that you tried that I could try with my class? Like Rachel had a really great idea with dialogue the other day that she shared with my class, and then I was able to try it out. So I think by using a program, it enables us to collaborate more with each other and become better educators because we're all doing the same thing.
So
That's good to hear.
here's my loaded question, and it's probably too early to tell, but do you think the kids are learning more and comprehending more than previous classes that didn't have Wit and Wisdom? And have you seen any evidence that I know each classroom's different and kids are different, but do you think kids are gaining and learning more because of Wit and Wisdom? It sounds like they're definitely excited, but the bottom line is, are they learning better and learning more? That's my question.
I would say yes, hands down. I think that having a common instructional background has made such a huge impact on how we instruct our students. You know, as a 4th grade teacher, prior to having Wit and Wisdom, without having a program, every 3rd grade teacher would approach their character trait unit a certain way. We would teach skills in isolation. And what we found is that that's not the best way to teach reading anymore. And so now by building background knowledge, we're able to embed those skills within each of our modules that we teach. So yes, they're definitely showing improvement there.
And just to add to that, students in kindergarten are now participating in Socratic seminars. They're ready, they're gonna go to first grade and know exactly what that means, what that looks like. So I can't wait to see what happens with these students when they're up in your classrooms, just to piggyback off of that for sure. And I think too, Mr. Keener, the coaching, as far as I'm a rule follower and I got that manual and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to follow this. The coaches are encouraging us. Your students, your class. You got how to make those decisions. So I definitely don't feel at all bound. I feel empowered. I feel encouraged to trust myself and my teaching.
That's good to hear. And I'll be very candid. I mean, this, what I just heard is very encouraging. Some of the data I think that we're going to get to later is also encouraging, but I'll be very blunt. When y'all came in and it was this very scripted reading this prepared statement one after another, and then I saw this grid here that seemed very rigid. I'm like, are these my worst fears here? But you've assuaged them. So thank you.
I have a different opinion. And if you all have been in any of the meetings, I've been 100% behind Wit and Wisdom. Probably wasn't supposed to be that biased, but couldn't help myself. You were saying exactly what I was hoping would happen. And as a former teacher, anytime you get new curriculum, a new program, new guides, it takes forever. Not literally, but it takes more than a year sometimes to figure out how to use that program, how to plan it out for a year. And granted, I taught high school, but I also homeschooled my kids. I could only plan a little bit out because there's so much information. And as I read this curriculum, I knew it was going to be the same way for you. And so I just have to say kudos to the administrators, your principals, your team leaders, Mr. Hoffman, Dr. Dandridge, who, and Mr. Berminski, and Mike too. I know he's been in your classrooms really supporting you, that you have taken this and run with it. And I was in some of the classrooms. I saw kids excited, elementary school kids. I mean, you're going to know if they're excited or not. Absolutely. So I appreciate it was a hard job. Extra work for you in addition to all the other subjects that you have to teach our children, to learn how to understand, handle, and use this curriculum in a way that is really going to benefit our kids all the way through. And we're going to hear about high school later. It'll be a few years before these kids get to that point. But I just really cannot express enough how much I appreciate you and the other teachers who piloted Savas also. It was extra hard work. And we as a board really, really appreciate that you have done that extra work, that extra mile for our children so that they can be well educated. So thank you very much for that.
I know you wanted to ask questions. We do have a lot more to share, actually. There are some examples and even some videos from the classroom.
Make sure they heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that we get that so you can kind of see the full picture of how it's being implemented.
So one of the things that the teachers are really all talked about is the student engagement. We know that if kids aren't engaged, doesn't really matter what you do up front, they're not going to be learning. So just have a couple pictures here. Some of the things they've talked about, Socratic seminars. You'll see an example of one of those in a moment. Chalk talks, they're really not chalk talks anymore because we don't have chalkboards, but end up being either dry erase board charts or the chart you see there in the bottom right-hand corner. It's just really a place for kids to throw up all of their ideas about a question. A tableau you see in the upper right, that's essentially the kids are given a scene from a book and they act it out, but they freeze. So they begin to act it out and freeze. And then their classmates are interpreting what's happening in that part of the book. Tableaus we just talked about. You can see at the bottom left, That's a fourth grade unit when they're studying the Great Heart. The students, it's hard to see there, but they actually have a piece of clay and a straw on their arms, their wrists there, so they can see their pulse and see what's happening with their heartbeat. So there's a lot of neat things that are going on in the classrooms to get the kids excited and engaged. The one thing that we find is almost every Wit and Wisdom lesson has some aspect of notice and wonder, where the kids are just asked, like, take a look at this book, take a look at this picture, take a look at this, take a listen to this piece of music. What do you notice? What do you wonder? And we call that a low floor, high ceiling kind of activity, because every child in that class is able to engage in and be involved in that. It doesn't matter whether you have an IEP or whether you have a GIEP, you're able to notice and wonder something, and it gives all kids that entry point and helps them feel involved and included. They're high interest topics. As Mrs. Fitzgerald mentioned, kids are reading text by the same author repeatedly within the grade level. So they get, oh, there's another Gary Paulson book, or they're reading other texts on the same topic. And as you saw, the book tastings are another way to get kids really excited about the module that's upcoming. The next slide there has some pictures of the first module book tasting that Mountville did. So you can see more of the scuba outfits there. But as you can see, like, this is not something that's written in the program. This is something that as a third grade team at Mountville, they decide to do. And so you can see the food they have for the kids are all sea themed. They're going through the books. So it is a fun event, but the purpose is they're going through the text before they've ever read them. They're noticing, they're wondering, they're thinking about what they might learn. And you can see the kids are totally engaged in that. And that's what we're looking for. On the next slide, writing was mentioned. This is one of the biggest areas we knew we needed to improve. And one of the things that really drew us to Wit and Wisdom was the explicit instruction in terms of writing. Mrs. Bear talked about her kindergartners writing multiple sentence paragraphs already. And the one piece that's really difficult with writing is teaching writing is hard. Some kids are really natural gifted writers, and for them, they blossom and they grow. But for others, they need a very explicit process. And so Wit and Wisdom provides that. One of the things that they provide is something called the painted essay. And you see an example of that on the right. And so each color represents something different. So the red is the introduction. The green is where they're stating the claim. The yellow is their first piece of support. The blue is the second piece of support. And then the green at the end is the conclusion. And so kids know what those colors represent, and what our teachers are able to say is go into your piece and highlight the introduction in red, highlight your claim in green, highlight the first piece of evidence in yellow, your second in blue, your conclusion in green. And if you don't have anything highlighted blue, guess what? You missed the second piece of evidence. If you don't have something red, you missed the introduction. So it allows them to be much more independent with their writing, but also holds them accountable for what we need them to be doing. Reading obviously is a huge part of this. The kids are all exposed to rigorous texts that are on grade level. We are making sure that all fourth graders, for example, are reading fourth grade text. In the past, when we did guided reading, if we had a fourth grader reading on a second grade reading level, they were reading second grade text. That did not get them ready to take a PSSA on a fourth grade level. So we have all kids exposed to that text. What we're finding is that if we have kids who need assistance with the reading, we have audio recordings of that. Teachers are reading it. They're reading it in groups. And the awesome thing that we're seeing it is even those kids who are performing below grade level, when the text is read to them and they have access to it, they are showing us really deep comprehension. So we know it's not a comprehension issue, it's a decoding issue. And so that's what we work on during intervention time. But they are able to comprehend that and make connections between the texts that they are reading. Wit and Wisdom has new read assessments in grades 2 and up that allow them to practice text related to the module topic that they've never seen before, and then give them practice answering PSSA-like questions so they're ready for those state tests when they come. Next slide. Listening and speaking is also a huge part of this program. It's something that as we were piloting, we noticed is a real strength, because we know that in society today, people don't do a whole lot of listening to each other and sometimes need some direct instruction on how you speak appropriately to one another. And the program does that. They're explicitly taught how to speak with others. They have in-depth discussions related to the books they're reading surrounding the settings, the characters, the themes. And then one of the things that you've heard a lot about is a Socratic seminar. And basically what that is illustrated by the picture here. The kids sit in a circle and they talk. And the teacher sort of steps back. They have a topic that they're talking about or a question that they're to be addressing, and they sort of run the conversation on their own. And so we're going to show you an example of that in a fourth grade classroom here from their most recent module, the American Revolution.
But they weren't. So Parliament decided to take away the taxes for this, and then they decided to have different taxes, but that didn't work. In result to that, the colonists smuggled imported goods from other countries to, since the British, were like taxing them on goods, the colonists decided to, steal, imported goods and make and grow their own goods. I didn't agree, not if, because of the taxes that the, British were giving to the colonists, it was illegal to buy British goods, so they started making their own. Yeah, but they weren't, so.
I don't know if you noticed all of the content specific vocabulary that those fourth graders are using. So that comes from the text that they're reading. They're taking all of that information in and then using that to respond to a prompt. And providing, as you saw, a conversation, they're using those visual signs. I agree with you. And they're bouncing off of each other with their ideas, which is what we want them to be able to do.
Mr. Hoffman, we saw this during the pilot. I remember, I think it was in East Pete. I don't remember if it was third or fourth.
I think it was maybe in, well, I think that was actually fifth grade. that we
Fifth grade,
saw.
yeah, I
Yes.
couldn't, but that was really, I mean, I think you were asked to come in and I just happened to be,
Mhm.
it was like the first time the teacher tried it or
Yeah.
the second time. And that is really, seeing kids do that was.
Mhm. And as Mrs. Bear said, her kindergartners are doing it. When we told kindergarten teachers, your kids will do that, they looked at us like we had 7 heads, but they do it, right? They do. So next, these are some of the things that are not in the curriculum. So Mr. Keener, some of the things that you're talking about as far as the pieces that our teachers are adding. The rest of this presentation is all of that. So after the hatchet unit, looking at survival, we had one of the park rangers from Lancaster County Park came into one of the buildings and did a whole presentation for the fourth grade team on survival skills. The picture there is a Zoom that was set up in Roarstown sixth grade with the author of Ramayana and the author of the Odyssey, the 2 books that they read in module 2. Both the authors had a presentation for the kids, and then the kids were able to come up and ask questions. The best thing was for Jillian Cross, who's on the bottom there, who was the woman who wrote the Odyssey, that adaptation of the Odyssey. She lives in England, so she was literally like 8 hours or 7 hours behind us doing this. But one of the kids came up with the copy of the Iliad, which she had also done, and said, like, I loved your book so much, I went out and got the other one. And so all the teachers and commented, like, there are not too many sixth graders who will go out and ask their parents to buy them a copy of the Iliad, but he did. We had a Zoom with the director of outreach for the Nez Perce Native American tribe. The fifth graders read a book about their journey as they were being literally chased by the US Army. They still exist as a tribe today. And so they have a director of outreach who does Zooms with classes to give them ideas of how a Native American reservation looks today. Fourth graders had a visit from a cardiac surgeon. The first graders did a visit from the Lancaster County Library Bookmobile when they were studying books around the world. And then, as the third grade team already mentioned, they had a visit from the world's leading expert in ghost sharks, who would have known it, works at Millersville University. So the next slide has some more of those pictures on it, where you can see some of those events in action. So really the outside connections that this has built, the opportunities for kids to explore outside the classroom walls has really been amazing. On the next slide, we've also done a lot of tech integration with our tech integration specialists. They have worked with classroom teachers to develop ways to integrate technology into this as well. So the two pictures you see on that slide were sixth graders using coding to code the little robot ball there called a Sphero. And that Sphero was working around a circuit to retell the hero's journey in Ramayana. We had second graders when they were studying the westward movement, they were using dash robots to take a covered wagon that they had made across the mountains, over rivers, across various obstacles that were in their path. The Nez Perce Trail with Ozobots. We've had some augmented reality pieces dealing with westward expansion in the space race. So kids were actually able to put themselves in a covered wagon or put themselves in a spaceship that was traveling. We did green screen newscasts with the Phantom Toll Booth, and then had some indie robots, which you'll see on the next screen, dealing with their animal unit. So there are some pictures of the covered wagons with the robots and their tech integration. You can see on that green sheet of paper, they had the various obstacles that they had to navigate around, including some bison and some rocks there to represent the mountains. So they had to code the robots with their iPads to get to the west without encountering any of those obstacles. The next slide can see the indie robots, which are little cars. These are for our youngest kids. They are programmed using those colored squares. And so their task was to visit different animals with different features. And there's a real short video there that we'll click on to show you what that looked like in action. Maybe. Is it in Google Drive? I think so.
It works on our laptops.
Good.
Yeah, you guys were signed in. So it's not.
So the neat part about these, when Mr. Graham gets that pulled up, is the kids are still taking their knowledge that they've gotten from the modules, from the books that they're reading, and now they're adding the technology piece into it as well, which is giving them a natural integration, which is what we want it to be.
It sounds so collaborative. You guys said that on multiple levels, like between teachers, but it sounds like through the coaches, through the students, do you see the students being more collaborative as well? Because it seems like a good model for that. If anyone.
There we go. So you can see there, the different colors tell the robot to do different things. So they had to figure out which animals they were going to. And then once they did that, they had to program the robot to get from one animal to the next using those colored tiles. So just some neat things that the kids are able to do to demonstrate their learning, not only in ELA, but also in the world of technology as well.
Does the Wit and Wisdom encourage the visits? Did those kind of things happen before? Like, had somebody on Zoom and does the Wit and Wisdom encourage that, or was this done
That is
prior?
all these people right here. So that is not part of the program at all. So that is our teachers
So you've
doing this
always
on their
been
own.
doing that. Wit and Wisdom didn't necessarily have you have visitors and stuff. You just incorporated it into the curriculum, what you were teaching.
I personally didn't have visitors before this, but now that our whole grade level is doing the same thing, we're teaching about a certain topic. It allows me to be able to reach out to certain people that ties directly in with our learning. So it makes more sense rather than like special holidays or special like Earth Day, having someone come in. This just is more natural. It goes along with what they're learning, and they're able to have great discussions, great connections with the people that we're bringing in.
So Wit and Wisdom helps better collaboration with all the teachers teaching the same grade in the school.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay, thank you.
And I will say the people that are coming in are totally impressed and shocked by our kids' knowledge.
Megan, did that answer your question?
Oh, I mean, I could tell that was happening, but I thought it would be a great effect on the students, which is what I think about. So that it's trickling down to them is wonderful.
Yeah, I don't think Wit and Wisdom's, specifically says bring in a speaker now, right? And those kind of things did happen in the past, but it is prompting that curiosity in topics. We've seen that not only with outside connections, we've seen it across departments as well. We've had our art department making connections with some of the units that the students are seeing in the classroom. Our librarians are working at different ways to collaborate with our ELA teachers on units. Our music teachers have said, I can compile a playlist based on whatever unit you're going with. So we've seen a lot of that cross-discipline collaboration that's become natural as part of this program. So just a light touch on data here, just a quick note, we did switch to a new data tool this year with Renaissance Learning. So I don't have comparable data year after year, but we are monitoring whether our students are learning. The STAR data diagnostic tool gives us the ability to test our students 3 times a year, or as many as we want, but we are testing them 3 times a year just to make sure that we are seeing growth. The first slide up here is our early literacy STAR data. So these are our students in kindergarten and first grade. And you can see from the fall assessment to the winter assessment, we are seeing growth in our students. I'm happy to see that in year 1. You never know. Oftentimes there are implementation dips as we are learning new programs and we are going through all the stress and the hard work of implementing for the first time. So for everyone to see almost the same, if not more growth is very positive for us. Obviously, LIC doesn't have any early learners there, so they're blanked out. And then on the next slide, we have our reading assessment data, which is for given to students grades 2 through 6. Again, still seeing that growth. This does help us also predict the students that will be proficient come state assessment time, which will start next week. So we are excited that once we get that data, that we will also see that our students are performing well year after year.
So Dr. Dandridge?
Yeah.
Just to better understand this data.
Yeah.
You said you don't have any comparator data from prior years.
Correct. Because last year we used a different product. So this is the first year we're using the Renaissance STAR data. Now we will be able, like when we have PSSA results come in, we'll be able to compare that year after year. So we will have some touches. This particular assessment, which is what we're using, teachers are using with our students.
So in other words, all this data shows us now is the students are learning.
Correct.
And growing.
Correct.
Which is a good thing.
That's a good thing.
But we don't know if this has anything at all to do with a particular curriculum or a particular faculty member. This is just predictable growth that we would hope and expect would happen over the course of the academic year.
What we are happy to see is that our students are growing with this program. So that's a positive sign. You're right. I don't have, this is what they grew last year and this is what they grew this year. So, but we will be monitoring that as we go forward.
So PSSA, is that tested later this spring or is that
It
already?
starts on Tuesday.
Okay,
Yep.
so we'll get that data probably in the summer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have 2 questions. One, how are our non-native English speakers doing in this program?
Yeah.
How's that affecting their progress with language learning, reading, etc.? And the second thing, because I think I have a high regard for your intuition about how things are going. And thankfully, we have people who are also very data oriented. And then I would just want, how do you think they're doing? What's your feeling, your gut instinct from your experience from previous years? Do you think this is like a really positive choice direction that we've made here with this curriculum? Do you wish we were doing the old curriculum? What do you think? Well, there really was an old curriculum and that came out too, but the old way, I guess, is a better way to put it. It's not graded. I just want to know what you think.
Student who has very limited English proficiency and ELA is one of the times where I feel like is very excited and just the use of like images and everything like that. It's amazing to see how much he's grown. Beginning of the year, he wasn't writing anything, and he actually just last week wrote his own sentence. So even the scaffolds that we're able to put in place in ELA with sentence frames, just the vocabulary, it is amazing to see how much he has grown, and he's excited for it. So I do think it is very beneficial for students with limited English proficiency.
Thank you.
I would say too, something that I'm amazed at is, oftentimes even when I was IST and helping with interventions with students, and as Jason had said, we move that, if they're reading at a second grade level and they're in fourth grade, oftentimes we move that bar down and have them read that second grade text. It is so great that we're not moving that bar down. That bar is up for all, and they are rising up to it. I see the same thing with students who are maybe limited English or have speech and language needs. They're in the Socratic seminar speaking and sharing really profound thoughts, and you're just like, whoa, so I think that's my instinct, is like just being in and out of classrooms for the past 20 some years is, wow, this is where it's happening, and developing those when we speak to someone and when we listen to someone, that's happening at the same time. So I think that's really neat. We shouldn't be lowering the bar. We should be keeping that bar high and keeping those expectations up, and then they are rising to it, which is really neat to see.
It's kind of insulting to the non-native speakers, actually. Having been in a school that was predominantly another language, and they were being taught lower, but when they were taught to say at their grade level, it was like, wow. So that's a good thing. Thank you. Thank you for
Didn't want to
sharing
interrupt
more.
before because I was the one that suggested waiting until the end, but I just wanted to add now. Some of the words I heard you say in your presentations just made me so happy. I heard joyful and immersive and vibrant and confident. And those are such important words to know that you as teachers and your students are feeling that way in a learning environment, that kids can be joyful and fully immersed and confident in learning is fantastic. And so I do, like others have said, I just want to thank you for all the work that you've put into it, that the creative bravery of coming in here with what you're wearing and doing that joyfully for your students that's what gets them excited. That's what makes them laugh and smile. And when you're laughing and smiling, you're open to learning more too. So I think that's wonderful. And the times that I've been in the classrooms, I too saw them making those connections in the other, like in the science. They were using the notice and wonder in science, and they're applying it across the curriculum. And I think that is, that's what you want, that those things are coming naturally to them, and it's a part of their integrated into their learning styles. So yay for all you've done. Thank you.
I don't have anything to say except that if you need to go, I know we've held you here pretty long. Please feel free to get up and go. We won't be offended.
Well done. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
So the only thing I just 30 seconds here real quick. I know, Steph, one of your colleagues left, I believe, but Rhonda's back there. Jen had to leave, Steph, Sarah, the entire Mountville team. You all, as teachers, represent what's outstanding about education in terms of your passion, your dedication, your commitment. I've had conversations with you ongoing, and I know this is not an easy program to teach. We've had those conversations about how hard it is, but how you've come together as a team to support each other, to really focus on what you need to do for your students. And your colleague's not here. I know you do that, but it is what it's about, and you represent the great part of education in that you have now what to teach. Couldn't have said it more perfectly, as you said it, Steph. Like, you now have to own the craft of it, and how you deliver it is critical. And by doing it as a team and trying to figure out how to push each other and how to keep moving forward, it's going to benefit our kids. So I do want to thank all of you who are here and who are here, because you are setting the bar for your kids. You talked about that, raising the bar for the kids, but you're setting it. You're the one who's allowing it to stay there and not bringing it down. So thank you for that.
I'll say one thing. I'll stay positive with this because most of you probably remember I was the only one that voted against Wit and Wisdom. So if you didn't know that, I'll just remind you I was in favor of the Savas program. But I will say that having a consistent program for each of you to work off of year after year will improve results. I'm well aware of that. I was in favor of having a program. Maybe this wasn't my favorite one. I'll be the lone person that would say that, but at the end of the day, I do believe that there will be value in the consistency. And you talked a lot about that, how you can collaborate, that one person's not teaching this. You know what to expect. The children know what to expect going to that next grade level. So there is positive in this program, even though it wouldn't have been my first choice.
Is there any negatives, or this has been all been positive and it's great, but is there any struggles or things that maybe we could do better, or any ideas in that vein?
We have some next steps.
Okay, you're gonna answer that. All right.
So some of our next steps are to look at the end of year STAR data, and also analyze PSSA data. That'll be our first chance to really look at something from before and something with everybody doing Wit and Wisdom. We do have some tweaks to the curriculum guides based upon teacher feedback. We know that it is a heavy lift, and so yes, there is a lot of planning that's involved, and that will get easier in future years. But we also know from going through it with a year with everybody, there are some things we need to work on. And some of those are some of the modifications that we need to make to certain kinds of writing tasks. Somebody mentioned having word banks or sentence starters. Some of those things are things that we need to create or have been created that need to be linked into curriculum guides. And then our last step is to do a survey for all staff and parents in preparation for next school year to see where our glows are and where our grows are. And so that's kind of where we're headed.
I just want to say I was impressed by these Socratic groups where the kids, because that's going to be what the real world is. And doing that young, I think that's a great thing. I mean, there's helping kids to interact and speak with one another versus just sit back. So I'm impressed with that. I'd like to see one of those.
I just text you, Mr. Maris,
What's
because I
that?
didn't want to talk to you.
Any other questions?
I have one more, just very quickly. And by the way, thank you for the work and for the presentation. Really, really cool to listen to. And certainly some good progress for sure. Slides 8 and 9, the graphics that show the outline of the implementation phases, teacher and student actions. Who wrote those? Who published those?
Those are from Great Minds.
Okay.
Mhm.
Where?
From Great Minds. That's the company from Wit and Wisdom.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, that comes from the company. That was part of the coaching package. And we
So I'm
worked with
getting
them at the
Yeah.
beginning of this to talk about what the implementation would look like in the
That was,
district.
I just remember most of the board, if not every single person on the board at some point was curious as to what kind of support we get. Are we just going to try to win a contract here and then say thanks? Or are we actually going to show some support and some love and some continued guidelines? And so I just want to make sure that was happening.
Mhm. Yeah. And we have been working with the coaches to make sure that we are not losing that knowledge, right? Really, their principals are going to take on a lot of the coaching aspects that the Great Minds coaches brought to us this year. So they are all going through their individual learning walks with those coaches throughout this year so that they really have the playbook to continue after they.
Okay, including like tweaks to curriculum guides, as was mentioned, right?
Yep, and that was what
they'll
Mr.
be
Hoffman was
part of
talking
that
about. Yeah.
Process, perfect.
Yep.
Awesome. Good news. Cool. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you again to all the teachers who, before a long weekend, showed up here to share their experiences. We're very appreciative of it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the next presentation we have for you this evening is a look at our secondary and our high school. And some of the, oftentimes we are looking at our traditional four-year college pass students. There was a request to come and look at some of the other paths that we have for our students at the high school. So Mrs. Dicely and Mrs. Secor are here to share those with you tonight.
I just wanted you to know that Amy wanted us to wear costumes tonight. I suggested blazers would be more appropriate. Okay,
We'll expect that next time.
excellent.
And
Also-
speak for yourself, Mr. Maris.
I also did want to mention as a follow-up to the Wit and Wisdom, the comment that Mr. Wagamuth just made about consistency and how important that is. And the secondary world is so excited. Our middle school teachers are so excited that the students are going to be coming to them next year for the first time with this shared background. And we have also facilitated conversation between 6th grade and 7th grade teachers so that the 7th grade teachers know what they're coming from. So we've talked about the language of the writing. We've talked about how the Socratic seminars work, how they tackle text, because we feel that's so important in that transition. But 7th grade teachers are elated that instead of coming from all of these different elementary schools with each teacher in each building doing things differently, they're going to be coming with a unified background. So we are excited about that. So as Dr. Dandridge mentioned, earlier this year, I was presenting some new classes and some of the focus was on our new college and the high school offerings. And Mr. Donato said, what are we doing for everybody else? I'd love to hear something about that at some point. So here we are. I asked Mrs. Secor to join me tonight in preparing this just to talk about some information. This is truly just an informational presentation. We're not asking for anything for you to vote. We're just sharing some of the things that are happening at the high school. The first slide really just shows the levels for our core classes. And similar to what was mentioned earlier, we have the same standards that are given to us by the state, regardless of what level students are in. So the bar is set high. And so what we need to do in each of these classes is find ways for students to accomplish the same standards, regardless of what level class that they're in. So the highlighted ones on here are the Keystone classes. So those are the classes where the red ones are where they would take the Keystones. And then you'll also notice that while we start out with not as many choices as we get into 11th and 12th grade, you know that we have worked in the English department to give some different thematic options for students. In the math department, we have added the math for medical careers that will be offered for the first time next year, and the math for trades class that will roll out the following year. These were part of my math plan that I shared several years ago for the secondary level. Also, within the last 5 or 6 years, we've added the Intro to Human Biology and Allied Health Sciences, which is a class in the science department that is really aimed to people who might be going into certification programs like phlebotomy or 2-year programs. So these classes are much more directed towards students who might not go the 4-year path, but might go into some kind of training post-secondary.
And so following up with the things that Mrs. Dicely is discussing, we also know that not all students learn the same way at the same pace or come with the same background. So a lot of things that our teachers are working through with students to help them to achieve those same goals is having different differentiation or scaffolded, learning opportunities for our students so that they have access to the learning that's appropriate and effective for them. So some general differentiated and scaffolding strategies that are provided during instruction include leveling texts, previewing vocabulary before we read, providing sentence starters or paragraph frames for writing assignments, adapting tests, which could include less options, word banks for essays, more structured essay questions to help students develop a thorough response. So they are using some of those skills and strategies to have access to that same level of content and rigorous text that we would want them to be reading.
In addition to the courses that were listed on the previous slide, Our special education department does also offer classes in ELA and math for students who are not at a level to perform. So sometimes our students are mixed in with the other students and they're receiving push-in support in their general education classes. But we do offer these classes for students who need additional support. Likewise, and Mrs. Secor will talk about this, everyone, and this is a state requirement, but it is part of their post-secondary planning, all of their IEPs require transition plans.
And a transition plan is in an IEP, it's a required component for students with disabilities starting at age 14. That students have this plan to prepare them for their next steps after high school. And the plan can include a combination of any of the following things based on the student's need. Talking about post-secondary goals, vocational training, employment, independent living, and community participation. And this plan is written in conjunction with the student's IEP team, as well as the student being an integral person in designing that plan. I am also for the next bit of information. I have the privilege of working with our half-day CTC students every day. And that because they are almost all 11th graders, and as the 11th grade principal, I've learned a lot about the CTC program in the last 2 years while being here at Hempfield. Our students can participate in half-day or full-day programs at either the Mount Joy, Willow Street, or Brownstown campuses. And students have to complete an application and go through the process of being selected to meet the CTC eligibility requirements. And it's a pretty rigorous process, and students from all across Lancaster County are applying. So the seats are coveted, and our students work really hard to work through that application process. And many of them receive extra supports from either their counselors or their case managers if they're students with IEPs. The basic sequence options, students have lots of different options. They can actually start in an early entry program in 10th grade and do a half-day program. They can also follow up with another half-day program in 11th grade and then attend either a half or full-day program in 12th grade. And those sequence options can change if you don't start in 10th, but you want to do something half-day in 11th and then fuller half-day again in 12th. So they have lots of different options with a variety of different areas of study, which we'll go into in just a few moments. And then the last graphic up there is just showing you our enrollment for both half-day and full-day programs for the last 3 years.
Mrs. Secor, what is your sense from the students about their experience at the CTC? Do you think overall it's positive, getting better, getting worse, staying the same?
That's a great question. In my 2 years experience in working with these students, I am really impressed by the number of students who participate in a half-day program and then want to continue to pursue a full-day program in their 12th grade year. We have very few students who don't reapply for admission the second year. And we actually have students who apply for more than one program. Obviously, they can only get into one, but there's multiple opportunities and options and programs that they would like to go into. They don't just choose one, and if they don't get in, then that's okay. If they don't get the first one, then they have another one lined up.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So do we have data going back further, like 10 years? And because I know this has been,
I've shared that, but I can reshare it.
okay, you have shared that?
Yes,
Is it-
every year when I get them in the fall, I give you the historical.
Okay,
look.
so is
we,
it?
we have been increasing steadily
Good.
Since 2019, when you asked about that particular topic. So we are very high in comparison to others, and that's part of the reason why we have budget conversations. Our share of that budget continues to increase.
Gotcha.
From the ADM standpoint.
One of the dilemmas, this is going back before you, even previous superintendents, was parents weren't keen about their kids going into CTC. Are we doing better at that?
I personally think that there has been a shift in the thought of who the students are who attend CTC. These students are students who want to, learn a trade and want to move into the workforce and learn the skills and strategies that they need to be successful. I know that former mindset that you might be referring to. I think I remember it from when I was in school and with my peers. And I definitely think that that feeling is a little bit different. I think also part of the reason that is, and I was going to reference this graphic on the next slide, but these are all of the full day programs that 11th and 12th grade students can participate in at the top, and then our half day programs at the bottom. But even more, in our course selection guide, which is linked at the bottom of this slide, you can actually see, I brought it just so that you could see that it does in fact exist. It really breaks down the programs even more specifically. So like for transportation, or I'm sorry, Advanced Manufacturing Center, that's just one box up on the screen. However, there are multiple programs within there. So this is just a very small view of all the opportunities that the students have. And so I think because they have way more opportunities than they used to, I think that's changed the mindset of what the CTC has to offer as well.
Because I look at the 99 and 71, I assume they're different students. That's 170 out of how many in the high school? 2,200?
That's true, but you also have to understand that only a very small number of students from each high school in the district are selected.
Correct.
So for example, in 22-23, we had 144 students, 23-24, 144 students, 24-25, we have 170 students. This year's junior class is a little larger, so that's a lot of those half-day students. But I think that this is a very, this is an average number if you were to speak with other districts in the county of how many students within buildings are attending, within schools are attending.
Pushing what, 7-8%, high school students?
Right, but when you think about the counties, all of the county schools have equal access. So when they apply, it's making sure
So
that.
not all of them get in.
Correct.
No, no,
More applying than even what's on.
Correct.
here.
yeah, exactly.
But Mr. Meredith makes a good point. We shouldn't have the average number. We should have an above average number because we are above average in size.
But I think I believe we do.
Percentage.
Because when we look at our budget, what we
Sounds like we
contribute from a
do.
budget standpoint based on the number of our students attending and the makeup of all of that, we are the highest.
Right, I think we're saying the same thing. We
But that's what I'm
should-
saying.
Yeah,
So our percentage of students is higher
yeah,
compared to others.
yeah.
Yep.
And Mr. Maris, I will tell you, and I'm, Mrs. Sequel may not know this, I'm actually Hempfield's rep on the JOC. But it is a core focus right now to try to grow capacity in some of those high demand programs, some of what I'll call the core construction trades, electrical construction technology, welding, HVAC, carpentry, the sort of build things programs that are so important and that the county desperately needs. And it's front and center on the mind of the JOC right now to try to build that capacity.
Thank you.
The other thing, a lot of things have changed in here because, I mean, a lot of the certifications and actually credentialing is coming out of here versus what they did 10, 20 years ago. So there's a lot of credentials these kids are coming out. I mean, some of the stuff that I was teaching for them, like, yeah, they're coming out and being able to get a job.
Yes.
That's credentialed that they would have to go to college for 2 years.
Next slide, Mr. Graham.
All right. So in addition to those areas, a few other things that we do offer at the high school. Our English language development program, of course, has classes that are offered at every language level. And specifically in the English language development program, we offer a career pathways class. So for students who are coming to us from other countries and, how are they going to meld into the workforce, we offer this specific class that Mrs. Sagalow-Feldman teaches to help them make those connections and work on resumes. And she's taken them on field trips and is trying to get them out into the community to help them as well. Works with Millersville University, has done a variety of different projects for the students. We also offer the ASVAB twice a year for students who are interested in the military. And another program that we have in addition to the Career and Technology Center is the Thaddeus Stevens Full Day Program. This is also a very competitive program. We typically have 4 to 6 students who get admitted into this, but most Thaddeus Stevens of their programs are mostly 2-year programs. And so what this allows our students to do is get a 1-year head start on the program so that they complete the first year, their senior year of high school, and then their second year the following year. So again, very competitive, but we end up with about 4 to 6 students each year in that program. Then I've talked to you multiple times about this, but because of our pathways to graduation requirement, we've started to try to find ways to offer industry credentialing, not just to students at CTC, but other ways that we can do that within our courses that are offered here. So again, I've mentioned these before, but in our business department, we have Microsoft Office credentialing and FCS. We do the Red Cross babysitting certification. That's part of the preschool class. In technology and engineering, we have 2 different tests that students can have: the hand tool identification and safety as part of our materials and processes class, and the multimeter certification. I see that is spelled wrong. It says multi-mentor. It's a multimeter. Sorry about that. Is part of our electronics class. And then we do have our sports officiating class that does not have the testing that's right in the class, but prepares them with what they would need to know and all the steps that are necessary for them to become sports officials. Additionally, outside of those courses, if we have students who are still struggling to meet their pathway to graduation, we do have CPR and career safe industry certifications that we do on the side if necessary. And I just heard the other day, I think we have 7 students right now. That's all that haven't met our pathways to graduation in this coming class. So we're really doing, like, each year that number has gotten smaller and smaller as we're trying to reach that. That's what we have for you.
If I can just share, Mr. Maris, I went back and found back in 2019-20, we had about 100 students going to the CTC.
Okay, so we're doing a lot better.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
I will say again, thank you very much. That's
Answered your questions?
Yes, you answered my questions. I actually, when I looked at this the other day, I had no idea what the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. So I looked that up, and just as I encouraged the board to go on and look at sample PSSA and Keystone things, which the public can look at, I looked at, they have like what you buy a practice test. And I was looking at the sample questions. I'm thinking, okay, there was one, you only got like 5, and the last one had some graph that went like this, and you're supposed to tell if it's like 5 different choices of what kind of signal this would represent. Like, oh, that's interesting. It turned out I did get it right. It was a digital signal.
There's a section of the ASVAB that does not allow calculators for math. And it's also something that we've been working on in our high school math classes, is to have sections of tests that do not allow calculators. And it's a section that when we implement the Math for Trades class coming up, we'll be looking at some of that ASVAB preparation to help students know what to expect in that.
I have, I guess, a strategic question here. The title of this presentation is Preparation and Offerings for Students Beyond the Traditional College Path. And I think for a lot of students, some of the things that are outlined on slide 2 make a lot of sense. But I want to make sure that there's not some baked-in presumption that just because a student is taking the ASVAB and going to the military, or just because they're going to the CTC, that they have to take these foundation courses, that they might be more stimulated, better able to contribute in an honors or an AP course or something like that. And I guess I just want to make sure that our advising and our counseling doesn't fall victim to the title here.
No, absolutely not. And in fact, the philosophy of the College Board for advanced placement courses is that they are to be open to everybody.
Yeah.
And we really work to build with that concept in mind, and to make sure that we have that high bar for all of our students, no matter which class they're in or what level they're in. We're meeting the same standards. And we also look at the possibility of students moving from one level to the next level so that they're not tracked. So if they start in a foundations level, that doesn't mean they stay in foundations forever. We want to provide those opportunities.
And I also throw countering the opposite situation. I know when some of my kids were in AP classes, they couldn't get that business class to talk about balancing your checkbook and stuff like that. Has that changed also that there, it was kind of the academic track was separate from what Grant's talking about. But can these kids that are high end,
Yeah.
definitely college, can they take some of these? Like there was a business course that was really good at, because they didn't know how to balance their
Different
checkbook.
sides of the Same coin. Mr.
Yeah, the other side of the coin.
Everyone's required to have personal financial literacy as a graduation requirement.
That's right. You guys.
Everybody.
That's awesome. But is there other courses maybe that they wouldn't normally take? Can they still do that with that track that they're on?
So I wish Dr. Brassman was here to answer this in a little bit more detail, but one of the things that we offer for our students is the opportunity for them to, we call it WEP a class, which really means that they can take courses that do not count toward their GPA. And the reason that we do that is so that the highest achieving kids who might be fighting for class rank, and they might feel like if I don't take an AP class, I might not be able to reach a certain level.
Yeah.
They can take courses that don't count toward their GPA, and it's in the course guide. There's a limit
Yep.
to how many and when they announce that, and there has to be approval process, but it allows them to explore and take classes that they might not otherwise
Cool.
decide to take because they were so concerned about their GPAs. And
Understood.
that's been in place at the high school since before I was here. I don't know, Dr. Messer.
Just as an
That's good to
anecdotal,
hear.
you know that my girls, they only graduated a few years ago. They look, I talk about things, this is what you're doing in the high school. They're going to have this and that. And they're like, I really wish that had been available to me because I have one who went to college 4 years, one who she changed her course, thanks COVID. And she looks back and it's like, if I had had that, then I could be doing this. And she took, she went to college and then she's like, it's not for me, but what am I trying to say? All kids who are able to go to college are not necessarily all kids should go to college. And I appreciate that they have different opportunities, but none of those opportunities, it appears to me, are closing the door to what they want to do in the future. And I do really appreciate that.
I think of somebody that's, borderline genius and they're going, a high academic career. Well, maybe they could benefit from a food science or something because they get out and they don't know how to cook for themselves, even their genius IQ. So it offers a lot of opportunity.
I thank Mrs. Secor and Mrs. Dicely for that presentation. And our third presentation that we have for you this evening is on artificial intelligence and an update of where we are as a district in terms of the use of AI, how our staff and students might be interacting with it, and some direction of where we might be heading in the future. This is a topic we've talked about a couple times, as you know, is a growing area in not only in education, but in our society as a whole. So we want to start off by sharing some of where we are now and then setting the stage for some future policy discussions.
Okay, so I just started with a slide from a graphic that I found from the World Economic Forum with their most recent jobs report for 2025. And there was a whole section of one of their infographics that was about artificial intelligence and the impact on careers and how every career is going to need to be looking at that in their businesses. And on a more local level, I don't know how many of you saw, but there was just an article in the Lancaster Sunday News about a AI symposium that Millersville University held. And some of the options or items that they were discussing in that forum on a local level was AI being used to prevent falls in nursing homes. They had a survey that said 90% of the students at Millersville University say that they are using AI. And Penn Medicine is also using AI now to do all of their scheduling of surgeries. So, just to see some of what's happening, I thought it was interesting to see those tidbits from the community locally. The next slide tells us that because it's out there, what we really have to be thinking about is not, oh no, kids are going to use this to cheat. And instead, how are we going to teach them to use it ethically? Because it's not going to go away. It's going to be embedded in everything that we're doing. So we need to embrace it. And that was part of, I think, why Dr. Musser wanted to get this. Again, we've presented multiple times about as we're learning about AI, and even after the conference that we went to last year. Was that just last year that we did the Kutztown conference? I feel like so much has changed in just a year, and that's what we're continuing to see is just it's changing in ways that we can't even begin to predict. So we need to embrace it and look at how we're going to use it. I just saw a quote that said, AI is neutral. It's what humans decide to do with it that determines whether it's good or bad. And that needs to be our role in this. So we did a staff survey just in April, and we had 200, and I think it's actually up to 212 people who responded to the survey, just to get an idea of what our staff is already doing or not doing with it. And so this just shows you how often AI is being used in planning or creation of instructional resources. And so while we have 45% saying never, we have people up in that daily amount as well. And actually, Mrs. Secor and I were saying on the way here, we looked up a couple of things on transition planning for IEPs, since we're not the experts in the special education world in artificial intelligence. Like, let's look at what are those required components. So I think we're all starting to become more and more likely to pick it up and use that to do some quick research. So that's our how often staff is using it for their planning. And then the next slide shows us how often they're using it with students in instructional activities. And so you see that's a much smaller percentage. And we did break this down by level. So we are seeing far more high school using it than elementary using it with their students themselves, which makes sense for two reasons. One of them is that the kinds of assignments that high school students are doing, but also the permissions for AI sites. And so part of what we need to be working on as we get into the last slides that Mr. Graham will talk about policy is we have to make some decisions as a district so that we're making, deciding what they are not allowed to use when they're on our school devices.
So is that pie chart not good because we're not using it?
No, I
Or
don't think
is
so.
it-
I think the teachers, in fact, some of the results of some of the surveys is they're waiting for us to provide guidelines
Okay.
and policy to make sure that they feel comfortable using it with students and know what the best way is. And honestly, again, so much is exploding in this that our staff is really just learning about it as well. How do we use it in the best ways? And what do we want to teach students about it? So there's a lot of professional development that still needs to come. And I'll also show you a slide of how we've started in that world as well.
One quick question, if I may. These staff surveys, are they anonymous?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are these staff surveys anonymous?
I don't think so, because anytime they do a Google form here, it
Here's your-
has
Yeah,
a
this
name.
was
with
not
it.
anonymous.
Yeah.
no.
This was not anonymous?
I don't.
I
believe
would
so.
like to do an anonymous one. I bet that blue changes drastically. We did a similar survey in some divisions of my own organization. Do you use ChatGPT and AI to build presentations or to help you deliver such content or break down data analysis? And if people know that you're doing it, no, I don't use AI. I do it all myself. But if not, so I'm just curious.
Right. No, I think
There is a stigmatism. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
that's the difference here. I think is just that our teachers are using it. The first slide showed they're using it more themselves, but they're not having students use it yet. And I think, again, that's the guidelines that we're waiting for.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about privacy, data privacy and some other things later, but for the last several years, even before before AI became a thing, we have stressed very heavily with staff to be careful of the tools they're using online, particularly with students, that it may look harmless, but depending on the data you're putting in and things like that. And generally speaking, our staff is very good about not going out and using tools that we haven't kind of cleared for use. And so I think AI definitely falls in that at this point, that
Right.
they, as you pointed out, I think there's number of people waiting for us to bless or give the go-ahead on
And-
those tools.
Right. I mean, that's part of what we do is ask the technology department vets what we want to use and make sure that it is safe and make sure if the students need passwords, is it okay for us to use it? Does it work with our system? So I think that's an important point to know of why I think this is not a lot of teachers using it yet. So we asked them for some open-ended responses about what they see as benefits and what concerns they have. And I just trying to summarize into categories what I was seeing for benefits, generating ideas, changing levels of text. So you can take a whole passage that's written at a college level and put it into ChatGPT and prompt it to put it at a 10th grade reading level or something that's more manageable. I know Mr. Hoffman has used that for several things as well. Give students a push or an idea if they're stuck. So, you know, the dreaded, I have no idea what to write about. Well, now they can start prompting and getting ideas. Practice and test prep for students. So if they need extra problems for calculus on a certain topic, they can prompt ChatGPT to say, give me problems and then correct the problems, or proofreading and writing feedback has been another way that they've seen it as a helpful way. Concerns that they have are the ethical use. You know, how do we avoid cheating and plagiarism? That's no surprise that that's a concern. Students becoming too reliant on AI. Are they not doing the work if they're doing too much in AI? And then also a major concern is inaccurate or biased information. We shared this last year after we had come back from the conference as kind of a philosophy that we've shared with teachers through some of our professional development, that then when they assign tasks, we need to start using this kind of concept of explaining to kids what are they allowed or not allowed to do. And the simple stoplight makes it easy for them to see. If they're told this is a red, there is absolutely no AI. If it's a yellow, it's okay. If they have the teacher feedback and they get that approval from the teacher, or green may be an assignment that the teacher could say, yep, go, like do anything you want to use our approved sites for artificial intelligence. But this is a simple way that we're starting to share with teachers so that they can think about, all right, this is what I want to do in my classroom when I start to use it with students more. Again, some ideas of what we could do in an AI classroom: put text in a chat box to ask for text in a chat box to ask for feedback, brainstorm ideas, practice paraphrasing, analyze bias in writing, ask a prompt and then have students research whether or not AI gave accurate information, ask for sample questions, ask for step-by-step instructions to solve a problem if they're struggling. Ask AI to create a product such as a video or other presentation. Sometimes we spend a lot of time with projects where kids are spending more time creating the product than they are actually learning the content. And AI can solve that because it can put together that slideshow really quickly or can make a video really quickly. And if that's not the focus of what we want the project to be, we can come up with a really great product by using AI tools. This is a quotation that I shared with all of the department coordinators as well as in my curriculum newsletter to put in simple language from an email that I received as a parent of a Franklin and Marshall student. And so I thought it was interesting to see how a local college is dealing with it. And this was sent home last summer before the semester began. But I thought it was a really simple way of, first of all, emphasizing that they have to credit sources, which is something else that we are gradually teaching our students, that if you use AI, there's a specific APA or MLA format that you need to include how you use that and what prompt you put into AI to get what you got. So there's, you know, every organization is catching up now with how do we credit if we're using these things. So this talks about crediting. And then I really love this idea of asking, you know, would you ask a friend to do this? If you would, and it's okay, and it's not cheating. So for example, students might ask a friend whether they know any good books or articles, or whether they have might have a friend quiz them on a topic. So these are the kinds of things that would be acceptable use of AI. But you wouldn't ask a friend to write something for them and then submit it with their own name. So when we see that, I thought it was a really simple way of of trying to process when is it okay to use AI and when is it not okay to use AI. So far, we have started offering some professional development sessions on our like workshop days and some of our in-service days. And this gives you examples of some of the topics that we've had and the number of staff members who have attended those sessions. So we're, again, just getting going because we just are learning about AI. So we started offering the first sessions last March, and we're just have done at 2 different workshops 2 different in-service days that we've offered workshops this year.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about policy here. While we do have the rough draft of an AI policy put together, we've looked at samples from PSBA, the tech legal pool, and some other districts that have already published them. There's a couple things that we wanted some input from the board on in these different sections up here that I'm going to go through, just to kind of flesh out what we bring back to you. And you're going to see some language on the screen that came from some sample policies that we would end up incorporating if that's the particular way you want to go for things. But what I have up here is kind of an outline of the major areas that we've seen in all of the different AI policies, as the areas that you kind of have some decisions to make on. We're going to talk about all of them. The only one we're not going to touch on is data privacy, because that one's kind of just the legal things, and that any of the tools we end up using have to be FERPA compliant and SIPA compliant, and we're not going to be sending student data out to Google's massive AI in the sky for things like further training their AI and stuff like that, or that, as we mentioned earlier, things have to go through an approval process here in the district. Those are all fairly common that you'd see in pretty much every policy. The first up here is the scope of the policy. And again, this one isn't necessarily controversial in any way, but we're really talking about some of the definitions that would go into the policy about what AI is, and very specifically calling out generative AI or large language models, the type of AI that's going to be able to create something from scratch. I think, as you've probably noticed, even up on the screen here in Adobe Acrobat, there's an AI assistant button now. AI in one form or another is kind of baked into almost everything we're using, to the point that you can't really turn it off. And so for the scope of this policy, we're really talking about those content creation tools that go a good bit beyond simply making existing software systems work better. Because there are going to be a huge number of improvements coming to a lot of platforms out there that we use today. I think one of the most interesting ones I saw was from Toshiba. They gave us a preview of what's coming in future builds of our copiers. If you think about making a copy, you put a piece of paper on the glass, and you're picking things like duplex, number of copies, black and white color. The next iteration of their software, one of the drop downs is destination language, and it will literally translate the document on the glass into 250 languages via AI just by pushing the start button on the copier. So that type of stuff, I think, is coming regardless. There's all kinds of things in building automation and security that we're going to see with AI, but for the scope of the policy, we're really just talking about generative AI that's going to be used by staff students for work analysis and creation and things like that. There's some sample language up there. Like I said, we have a sample policy written. If there are no objections, or this seems like a good thing for any of these steps, please speak up. But this is kind of the route we're looking at going, again, unless there's wishes to go in some other direction.
We're looking to get some sample policy language out for May when we start down the property 700s, but we're going to hit AI under that property lens as well.
So after scope, one of the biggest questions that we need some direction on is around instruction. And there are policies that address this, and there are policies that don't. And this is really a question for the board about whether the policy does include some language that specifically directs the district to engage in age-appropriate instruction on AI. That is very specifically incorporating it into curriculum, whether that's research instruction or all areas. I don't know what that looks like. We obviously have not had deeper discussions about where that goes, but it is present in many of the policies that we've seen. And looking forward, I think it's something we're going to have to address at some point. But the question is that something that you would want in the first draft coming forward.
My first thought when you brought this up was ask our librarians. I don't know what conversations have been going on internally with staff and administration, but when this came up, that's kind of where I went. I don't know what.
At the risk of oversimplification, I wasn't around for the moon landing, but I was around for the internet and how it changed instruction. AI, again, I don't want to oversimplify, but if we're not teaching our students how to engage in AI, we're going to be doing them a disservice, in our opinion, where we taught them how to use the internet and how to use reliable resources and search and engage with the internet in a way that made them productive citizens. This is going to be a large percentage of their actual work, to Mr. Wanger's point over there.
And
Like
maybe-
it's going to be this is going to be a large percentage of what they actually do is engaging with AI.
And maybe that's why my thought went to librarians, because maybe at my age, that's where I learned about the internet and, you know, those research skills. So maybe that's why my mind went there.
Our librarians do digital literacy, media
So would
literacy
this
at
be-
all levels. And I think that's where my brain went when I first saw this, that it would likely need to be embedded into a lot of what they're doing, although I think it's going to have to go other places as well, but our librarians, I think, would be leaders in the ethical use of this because again, they're part of what they're already doing with digital literacy and media literacy.
I'll just state straight up. I read all this and I thought, this is really nice. I'm going to wait for somebody to tell me what I'm supposed to think. Because I don't know enough about it. The only thing I know is that two of my in-law children have received work from people, their supervisors, engineers, and they're in a government program. They had to give it back to the person and say, this is AI. I want to know your work, your conclusions, not just some AI generated paper. So that's where my mind went to. They're going to start at this level, but at this level, they're going to have to still do their own, they're going to have to know what they know and be able to convey that. So what's the gap between kindergarten and work as a profession?
Yeah.
Well,
So I don't know what that is. I don't know enough about it.
end of the day, good thing is when they take their tests, they can't use AI during their tests. So they're going to test their knowledge. My biggest concern is AI can help you to write papers. And how do you know it was written by the student or the paper? I think that's the biggest challenge. AI can help our kids be more effective. Ultimately, they're going to have to learn concepts themselves. AI is not going to teach them that. You know, I think about my area, engineering, you have to understand the fundamental principles. AI is not going to teach you that, but it can help you write a paper, you know, and write a better paper. And that's where I guess I would worry the most, that our kids are going to start. I mean, it's easier to get AI to help you write a paper than write it yourself. So how do we figure that out?
That was what my son-in-law encountered. It was an engineering project type paper. He's like in his 40s. He looked at it and said, "You didn't write this.
Yeah.
Go back and I want to know what." And that's the extent of what I know because it's technical stuff. I don't know all that. But so there was a balance. So I don't know if they need to learn that in college or if they didn't, when do they learn all that and how far do you take it? I don't have an answer for it.
Grant.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think that this draft language perfectly states what the high level goal of AI instruction should be. I think it embraces all the nuance and the challenges and the opportunities and the pitfalls. I have one technical point. It says students at all grade levels. So literally we would need an AI instruction kindergarten through 12. If that's what we want, great, but I just want to make sure that that's your intention in putting that language.
Well, this was sample language, and that's again why we brought it to you, and I think that's.
I mean, these are.
That's actually how I'm enrolling kindergartens through AI, but this is the conversation we were looking for to generate, are we on the right track and
No,
expose some of those
it
concerns?
states it
Yeah.
perfectly. I'm
Yeah.
just asking,
No.
the question is, are the administration recommending literally at all grade levels or simply age appropriate instruction?
I think you have to do all grade levels. I got a kindergartner, and the one thing is we all learned how to type. He doesn't know how to type, and he'll probably never have to learn how to type. Why? Because of AI. So as far as I'm concerned, like, you have to do it at every single grade level.
Well, what about when they take dictation and have to type it out?
I will say, I think we definitely need structure around this, and we definitely need to teach the kids how to use it. And I think there's a lot of things we need to use it, how to use it, how to, gain knowledge from it. This also the safety concerns, like private information, like, these kids start putting some of the private information, it's out there forever. So I definitely think we need to engage and have it a structured program for the kids, whatever that looks like, right?
Yeah.
But it needs to be needs to be managed, and we need to teach it.
And
Yeah,
that
this-
language,
Just like the internet, like you said about the internet,
Yeah.
like it needs to be that free.
and the language there says age appropriate, like what is it a kindergarten should know about this? What should a fifth grader know about this?
So
You
would
know.
that mean like a kindergartner using their iPad
Right.
gets instruction on using the microphone component? Do you know what I mean?
They
Like,
have iPads.
is that considered AI? Mike Graham.
That'd be more assistive tech,
Yeah,
but
so-
but
yeah.
along the same line.
Doing the same lines, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Scaffolding them
but-
to where they'll need
Yeah.
to be.
At the end of the day, though, back to the initial question and about I just lost my train of thought about giving teachers the green light. Like, some of this instruction, to your point, it can't all occur in the library. It's going to have to organically happen in all of our classrooms. So it's giving teachers a little bit of that guidance to not only are we looking to incorporate in certain areas, we kind of want this to be part of your instruction period for our kids, because this is their tool of the future. Like, we grew up on laptops and just word processing and email. Like, AI is going to be a tool of the future for them.
No, I agree that you said it well. I think that's my thought process. This is kind of separate from this. Is there a way to lock that you only have certain apps for AI that, because like the iPads, there's only certain things they can do with it. There's certain information they can gather, or because it's for education purposes. Is there AI out there that?
For education.
Yeah, I mean, we struggle with that with all kinds of sites that are created. Like, we can do our best. At this point, we don't restrict AI because there is no mandate to do it. Whether we're talking like legally or for whatever reason. Plus, if you restrict it, it makes it difficult for teachers to actually experiment and learn. One of the things that we are looking at, some of the tools and the workshops up there are very focused around education. And one of the goals is, if we're ready to move forward with this, we really drive teachers and students towards AI that are built around education, that we're good to go. It's not turning them loose on ChatGPT, which is,
General
out Wild West in terms of AI. It's stuff that's vetted or has some guardrails in it that we can put in place. There's one product we're currently using that has that. We haven't flipped it on. And there's a couple others that we could look at rolling out in the future.
And the policy is going to go through the traditional process. So if we bring it back 3 months in a row and continue to craft it so we get where we need to be, that's fine. Our goal is to have something somewhat ready for the beginning of the school year. But if it's September, it's not the end of the world.
I would love to see some language on what sites are allowed and what aren't, so that we have those guardrails. Like I don't know how that is, if it's possible, but something that says some guardrails of what is appropriate. Because it also can teach them wrong stuff. Like, I don't want them to learn the wrong stuff and the wrong.
Yes. And some of that comes in our acceptable use policy of technology. So that'll complement anything that we're doing with the AI.
And like a lot of other content filtering related things, it's graduated based on grade level. So when you get up into high school, you would likely see in the AI spectrum a lot of things. While we don't necessarily use them, if you have a kid doing dual enrollment or Betty Stevens, wherever, they're likely to be using a variety of different products we wouldn't necessarily use here, but we would still have open for any students that would be using it outside for whatever reason. So
I have a question about the handbook. I'm sorry, for the students. I know that Bill has said he wants to have it ready by a certain date, but they don't print it anymore, correct?
Yeah.
And so they look online and then, so if you just practically, do you change that all the time? Like you put, say this is, we go, okay, we're
We-
gonna have that, and then.
We can
in
make adjustments
October,
at
we're
will.
Like, oh my gosh,
Yep.
this is not the right
This
thing.
isn't the course guide where the schedule needs to be built and everything's time dependent. We can make these adjustments at any point.
So the handbook,
We're fine. We're fine.
thank you.
Okay. Next up is a section on academic integrity. And this is really how the district approaches AI in generative AI in regular everyday use in the classroom. And is basically what's acceptable, what's not. I kind of have in brackets there the stoplight example. That's generally what we've seen is some iteration or variation on that stoplight example where it's the teacher's responsibility to say what is allowed and what's not. And then it's the student's responsibility to follow that. And then there are obviously disciplinary procedures and everything if those instructions are not followed, but that's the most flexible way of giving teachers the latitude to use AI in projects without kind of nailing everything down in a broad sense. Yes. Peter.
I have more, I love the framework on the previous slide. I actually have a lot of concerns with this, and I feel like this could create more problems than it solves. First, I don't know that it's the job of the faculty member to tell a student that they may not cheat. Okay? I think plagiarism is plagiarism. Plagiarism existed when you took an encyclopedia and you copied verbatim, or you took information without proper attribution. Plagiarism exists when you have AI write something for you, or substantially write something for you without attribution. And plagiarism exists now when people pull things off the internet without proper attribution. It's all cheating. And just as our faculty right now, they instruct students on the norms of academic standards and what plagiarism is, but I certainly hope they don't have to say before every assignment, and by the way, you're not allowed to cheat on this assignment. So I want to make sure that whatever we put into the policy, establishing how AI could be used is one thing. But absent those instructions, doesn't give the student a green light to permit plagiarism, and that's what this draft says. This draft says that you have to receive notice from a teacher before you can be disciplined for committing plagiarism.
For using AI to commit plagiarism.
'Cause
Right.
you see my point.
I think it depends on whether you're using the underlying assumption that using AI is plagiarism out of the gate.
I mean,
But I do understand what you're saying, Grant, about it needing to be laid out before every single assignment seems.
Overreaching,
Yes.
overbearing.
but I don't know that it does need to be laid out forever.
No, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it, I think there needs to be an umbrella and then direction. Like I thought of what Kathy explained, because I thought of my daughter right away, an assignment where she was learning content about something, but she was struggling so much with just understanding how to get it in a technology format that the teacher wanted her to use, that she was not focusing on the content, which is what was being graded and what she was being asked to learn, and it sent her into tears. So in that sense, the teacher's saying you may use this technology of AI to create the presentation would be that green light where that's not plagiarism. You're using this technology to help you bring all your content together. You know what I mean?
That's no different than using PowerPoint to present information. I mean,
But
just
before
as we do it
every
right now.
Right, and I think that that's where that stoplight comes into play as teachers needing to make it clear to students so that there is no gray area of what is and is not okay with an assignment. You know, we can take, you can do all kinds of great research and then put it into AI and say, write a script for this and turn it into a play. I mean, you can do all these things. So which part is allowed and which part isn't? Can they use AI for the research or can they use AI to the other?
What you just described would be plagiarism. If a student turns that into
No,
a play.
it wouldn't be, because if I'm asking them to do that as part of their final product, we did
Oh,
it
no,
at our.
oh, you're saying the teacher asked them to
Mhm.
do. Okay.
Right. And so, or to do something creative with AI to come up with that final product. We did that kind of project when we were at our training at Kutztown University, where we did all the research, but then we put it in and said, make a script out of this. Because we didn't want the emphasis of the time to be on creating that part. Now, maybe there's another assignment where the writing of the script is the
But then
essential.
did you disclose that the script was AI generated?
Absolutely, and that's part of that.
It's not plagiarism.
Right,
But-
that's
Yeah.
part of that citation piece that we have to teach students that if they're using AI, they must cite it. An example that one of our, Mrs. Lewis, she's our AP English teacher and also the department coordinator that she used recently with her AP kids, was she had them take an entire essay that they wrote, copy it and paste it into AI, and then ask AI to give it feedback. Then with each item that the AI suggested that they changed, the students had to go through and decide whether to accept that change or not accept the change and explain why. And so, that's an example that's actually better than taking your paper to mom and dad and say, here, edit my paper for me before I hand it in the next day. I mean, this actually involved them making decisions about, did this change take away my voice from the writing? Did this change that AI is suggesting change the point that I was trying to make? And so they're having to make those conscious choices. But that's an example of using it in a way that is really helpful for students.
I think
Right,
that
but I'm also concerned. Excuse me, sorry about that. That condition precedent to imposing discipline is concerning. And I understand that this is a draft, but like right now, if a student turned in a plagiarized paper, but they weren't told specifically, you may not plagiarize this paper, we would still discipline them, right?
Yes, but that's
not what this says.
right. But that's because our guidelines are already in place for plagiarism. So it doesn't have to be told for every class, although every teacher in the secondary level puts it in their Schoology, puts it on the top of their research papers, like emphasizes it repeatedly.
I think some of the pieces that everyone's talking about, it comes down to the purpose of the assignment. And I don't disagree with you. I don't think every assignment has to be whether you can use AI or not. I think it really is the intent of, like, are you looking for content? Are you looking for something performance-based? Are you actually writing it? Because if you are actually asked to write something, using AI is not acceptable to do that because you're not writing it. But if you are trying to gather facts, how you gather those facts and how you record your references and citations for that, that's okay. It's what you're going to do with it after the fact. I think that's where we need the clarity around what's the purpose of the assignment. I don't think we need to personally go and say every assignment needs to, whether you can use AI or not. I think we have to be able to teach our kids through this journey that they're going to be on to understand the purpose of what they're being asked to do. Plagiarism is plagiarism, no matter how you want to slice it.
Are you in charge? I don't know, who's in charge of this meeting? This is
sorry,
still,
yeah,
I,
it's been
we made it a
frequently
policy now, or if we're still education meeting.
Yeah.
We're still
Okay.
education.
Yes.
I'm wondering if this is a place where it would be helpful to convene a group, a multidisciplinary or multi-level group of teachers to have them look at this and see, does this cover the basis of what we're doing on a day? And maybe you've done that already as you're talking about these things and looking, but if they're they're the ones that are doing the grading, they're the ones that are thinking about their curriculum and their rubrics for how they're grading projects. This is the kind of thing I feel like would probably be on a rubric of, or the description of the assignment would be, the options, the menu options, the
Right.
voice options for preparing but I don't know, is that? putting
We
the cart
certainly
before
do
the
want to
horse?
gather feedback, but we also want to have a policy because the policies are so drastically different on the continuum. And that's part of the reason we were, I won't say stalling, but just mindful of how we move through this process, because initial policies out on AI were how do we stop it? What's the discipline look like? That was all about that. And now we're on a totally different wavelength. Again, not even a year later. So we'd want to have something kind of, and we do have a couple drafts. We'd want to have something built and then gather some of that feedback maybe before maybe before the May policy meeting when we get a first draft. But I'm not in a rush to get it done, but I'm at the point now though where I do believe we're almost holding back our staff and students now if we don't come out and take a stand.
If I'm hearing you correctly, Mr. Keener, I believe your issue is probably with that third sentence with the responsibility of teachers to provide the notice. And then if that notice is not provided, that doesn't endorse plagiarism and other
Exactly. I
academic
don't want to
integrity.
set up a defense for plagiarism. I don't want there to be a
Yeah.
negligence defense for plagiarism.
Yeah.
Oh, the faculty member was negligent. They didn't provide the notice. Therefore, I have a green light.
Yeah, there you go.
To commit academic dishonesty.
I like the connection you did with the earlier part of the presentation. So we can look at that third sentence and either reword it or put in a clarifying statement that the lack of this notice does not endorse plagiarism, academic dishonesty, anything like that.
I think one of the other big takeaways is
Appreciate
there
that.
any concern with that stoplight example being the basis of either the teacher discloses in some way, no AI, you have to share what was used, or, you can use whatever you want to. That was one of the big takeaways from this slide. I think we were looking for to at least craft some of the language. Is that still an acceptable route to go as we move forward with AI with our teachers?
I think the yellow light, it needs to be very specific. I get the red and I get the green, but I think that yellow one needs to be very specific about not just that with citations, it's okay, but also with the parameters given by the teacher.
And that'll be part of the professional development. There's lots of good examples out there, and it is a model that we didn't create. It's actually used.
very
It
visual.
was part of the professional development workshop that we sat through. We see it in some other policies, but I agree that clarification is important.
I have a question about what we just discussed, what you all just discussed. Because sometimes we have a policy and then we have attachment of procedures or process for the implementation of that policy. What the discussion that we just had, it seems blurry to me, the distinction between that, because my understanding has always been, we want the policies to be really, as clear as we can, but we don't want them to be so involved and so detailed.
Yes,
So
we're having.
it seems to me that there has to be some.
Yes, we're having policy conversation. Administrative regs is a term, or also, we also have grading and reporting. We have a couple documents that kind of tie all this together, but to Dr. Damage's point, some of the PD that we're going to be doing is really, this is the board setting the policy. This is how we're going to have our teachers meet that policy.
That's
So
what you were referring to.
Yeah, I was just
But for
responding to his statement about, do we like the idea of the red light, green light? And I think if that's in use, I'm just saying that the yellow needs to be more specific about what that yellow means.
So as we put a scale into the policy, do we use a stoplight example, or do we do a 3-2-1, or do we have to put it in plain language? We'll take whatever scale we use. I'm recommending spotlight because I think it's a useful scale to use. We'll take whatever is in the policy, and then we'll use that in our professional development, talking points, procedures, et cetera, as we go forward.
I just have one comment. It's probably a little different. Everything that's been said about the need to stop ignoring that AI is here and we're going to need to use this into the future is important. I would just say, and I'm in the weeds a little bit related to the policy because I know we haven't started it, but I don't love the mandate for instruction on AI coming from the board. I would also suggest that I'm always going to go down the financial road, that this needs to be incorporated into what we have. The last thing that I would expect to see is that the board puts a policy in place that mandates that all students at all grade levels receive this and you need 30 coaches. I'm exaggerating, but that is not going to be in the budget. It needs to be built into what we're already doing with the staff and the teams that we already have and incorporated in the classrooms. Maybe you have a few champions of it, but it's not going to mean that there are dollars for extra people. So I would just caution in having any kind of mandate and any kind of policy related to this that is this specific. I could easily craft some language that would look a little bit different than this, but would still encourage the use of education around AI and appropriate use of it.
To your point, that's the power of AI. It's the leveling of the field because of how free it is and all the tools really are. So there is a cost piece to that. And again, that language, we can be very careful about mandating, but just encouraging or being a part of, or we can use some different language there to make sure we're addressing that concern.
Okay. And then finally, these are some more operational questions that have been fairly standard in all the policies we've seen, but two things for the board to consider. One is the use of AI in grading, and whether I think all of us, at least administratively, would agree that that final grade decision should be determined by humans or teachers specifically and not by AI. And then a very similar question with operational decisions, particularly around hiring and evaluations and things like that. Again, this language is pretty standard in every policy we've looked at, but again, it's a decision we wanted to ask you guys about what to include in the policy.
Every minute AI is getting more accurate, and different businesses are using it and having a check in to make sure it's accurate. And then after so many checks, it just goes through. There's a lot of different ways to handle this, but we're not at that point yet. We still feel very strongly about the professionalism of our teachers and their impact on this. And we feel that we're not there for these types of decisions yet.
Anything, okay, go ahead.
For at a high level, I actually think that that both of these are probably overly permissive. It goes without saying that the final decision about grading and about personnel actions, et cetera, are made by humans, or at that point, we should all just turn the lights out and go home, okay?
That's not how it's being used currently.
Correct.
No, well, okay, and I'm saying here, I understand that there are, I would go far stronger and not say final decisions, but most of the decision, the substantial decision should be human, not the computer spits something out and then someone glances at a sheet and blesses it. Because that's almost how I read this, is we're gonna let AI do most of the work and then we're just gonna review it and sign off on it. I would actually like to pull back the role of AI from grading and operations. There can be like a ministerial processing clerical piece to it. But these are fundamentally human judgment things that go to the core of what we do as an institution. And I would not want to delegate that to the degree that this draft suggests.
Well, I think it depends what they're grading, Mr. Keener, but I would suggest if you're grading a paper that's a multiple choice and you can get AI to grade that, why wouldn't you use AI to do that?
Scantron.
That's as it says, Scantron.
Well, yeah, but
That's not how I read this.
if you're talking about grading a paper, AI could give you a first pass to see if, there's things that the person's eye doesn't see. You guys are going to think I'm crazy and some people are going to be angry that I say this, but honestly, I could see bots taking over all of our education someday. I think it's coming. And I know we want to resist that and keep humans, to your point, involved and engaged. There are people that are applying that knowledge from all over the world that's coming together in an AI bot that's doing the work for us. I mean, I can get an AI bot tomorrow to do all of our authorizations. It takes a person hours to do and gather that information faster and more accurately. We can't resist it when it comes to helping us do our jobs better, faster, smoother, because somebody else is going to use it.
But that's the feedback we're looking for, like language wise, where should we soften, where should we strengthen, where the board, because we just don't want to bring you a policy that's out of line right off the bat.
Yeah, I do think the language here is very limited to specific things. It isn't about doing a specific task or whatever. This is just around grading assignments, hiring, evaluating, et cetera.
Like this is where we are not using it.
Correct. Like, I mean, what Ms. Dicely shared earlier, like companies that are using it for scheduling purposes, companies that are using it for fill in the blank to make things more efficient, more effective. And then you can use your staff in a better way because they're not having to spend the time. So I do think we just have to just really look at like, what is it saying? And if people are interpreting it differently, just hone in on what are we trying to say? Let's just be clear and concise.
Anybody else?
I have a question. Do we understand that I mean, I feel like there are going to be mishaps and mistakes made. Like, are we all okay with that? Like,
We have to be.
yeah, I understand, but there's gonna be policy and I don't want people being so like that this is new and this is like evolving by the hour and we have to be. I don't know what the word is, but that we're okay with it.
Well, part of our goal is still keeping the human piece and using it and keeping it as a tool, not as a takeover piece. So, I mean, at least where we're at right now, in 2 years, we could be sitting here having some very different conversations about efficiencies and budget and what AI can do and make us quicker, more efficient. So, but for now, that's kind of the aim.
So I have just one more question. It's probably to you, Mike. You said you compiled this policy after looking at other policies
The,
from.
the draft one that we didn't share came basically from, I think, 3 or 4 that we looked at. The language you saw up there was mostly kind of globbed together from 2 of them. But the themes that you saw up there were pretty similar in all of them. The language is a little bit different, but we didn't see a whole lot of the implementation, I think, was a little bit different, mandating instructions a little bit different, but the other core pieces were very, very similar.
Is it anything, and I assume that you looked at it too, is there any benefit for us to see what those other drafts or those other policies are?
I mean, we
Or is
can,
it just confusing? What?
There was so many different, yeah, I think it becomes confusing. That's why I even want to synthesize it a little bit for our own digestion before we
The
bring it to the
conversation
board.
tonight helps us really take all those together and bring forward a sample policy that hopefully respects what you're looking for.
Well,
But
lets
if-
me know what
I
I'm
would just
supposed to
say
be
if someone
looking
else
for,
wants to
please.
look at other policies.
Yeah,
we can
share them.
we can
Yeah.
bring the draft and then tack on the other district ones that
Well,
we've
if
seen.
if you think it's helpful, you're the ones that have looked at it and studied it. Is
Yeah.
that something you think would be helpful? Or do the members of the board think that would be helpful?
It depends on the goal of the board and administration, because some of the policies, there's certain components that are very restrictive. There's other policies that are way too loose. There's policies that are loose in some ends and tight on the back side. So that's why we tried to cobble this together the way that we did. Maybe we just start with our initial, I want to put it up just for discussion. I don't even want first reading consideration in May, and we start there. And then if there's parts that the board feels we're missing or we're not addressing, maybe I can pull some of those other policies and we can discuss them.
Seems to me that we would need more information, maybe in the May meeting before because once we start the first reading, second, I mean.
Yeah,
the ball's
I'm
rolling.
I'm just trying to get close so that you don't throw me out of here.
But we don't have to start it as a first. It could just be as a discussion.
That's what I mean, discussion wise. I just want to get close so we can have a viable discussion around it.
And then as we get into the actual parts, and if there is a part, like whether it be the scope, the instruction, the grading, then if we say we
Yep.
need more information on that
Yep.
part.
And if I go too far in the language, you can peel me back. If we don't far enough, we can add there and we can craft a little bit. But again, I have a goal for August because of the start of school. It'd be nice to unveil it there. But if we're not there, I want it right before we waited this long to do it. We're not going to rush through it.
You could always use ChatGPT to ask, how do I write the policy?
Oh, it's been done.
I say,
Been done.
That's what they
Anything-
started with. isn't it?
Yeah.
Anything else before we wrap up the education programs part of this? Anything else? Okay, this part is adjourned,
Thank you.
and thank you very much for everything. Do you want to take a break?
I think we're going on over 2 hours. Let's take a short break. We'll reconvene at 7:25. The policy part should be very brief. But then there's a discussion piece that I'm not sure how long that will take.
And I have a family party that I need to be at right now, so I will.
How brief? Super
So
short.
we will
But
be
let's
adjourned
go.
at 7:25.
Oh.
We're gonna start with policy 005, which was brought back. For some clarification or one in footnotes.
So just an overall statement about all the policies. This will wrap up all of our finance policies, and we'll be moving into property, the 700s, along with some AI and some other side policies that we're working on in May. Policy 005 is coming back as I was asked to get some clarification on the changes suggested by PSBA. There was an actual Supreme Court case, Pennsylvania court case in Third Circuit, I mean, in the Thorpe area that prompted the highlighted changes in 005. The other part I wanted to talk about that we never got to, in the PSBA version of 005, it has a consult section at the bottom of the policy. It doesn't prevent the board. The board always has this power. It just delineates the power the board has in engaging with consultants. So I didn't know if the board felt strongly about that language, wanted to include it, not include it. It doesn't preclude the board from being able to engage in consultants in any way it sees fit, provided it's voted on. But those are the only major changes for 005.
All right, any comments or questions about 005? I guess I have some, I'm not sure that the consultant piece is necessary. Dr. Musser, as you say, we can do this anyway.
It's not. I mean,
And
it's,
no,
it just delineates it. The only thing where you could say is a potential pro is for, there's not a lot of documents that are public facing. This is one that is public facing and delineates that for the community. Outside of that, I don't see any value in the statement if the board doesn't find value otherwhere.
would anyone object to removing the highlighted part that says consultants and advancing the rest to first reading?
I'm fine removing it.
I'm fine keeping it, just if it makes it more public and more transparent, if it's already a thing the board is allowed to do, because I had asked
Yep.
about that and what I learned was that it's in school code anyway, and it's there. This is just making it more public facing. Putting it in a,
My concern specifically is with the part that said a consultant had no administrative authority. There might be a scenario where the board would hire a consultant to oversee part of the district that is having issues. And I wouldn't want the people in that department to then say, oh, I don't have to listen to you because of this. That's my only concern.
third part.
I feel like, oh, go ahead.
Pardon me?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. You weren't done.
So that is really my only concern with it. We could also just take that paragraph out.
I would still recommend removing all of it. Here's the part that I don't like. The function of the consultant shall be to make studies and to present recommendations to the board. The consultant shall not be charged with the implementation of a report. You know, I get that, but the reason I have trouble with that is because it's getting very detailed and very specific. A policy doesn't need that level of detail in it,
Right. So
especially
you're
when
saying-
I'm saying take the whole thing out. I just
Okay.
think the level of detail in it is just going to create more issues than it does good. A policy should be high level. So I just suggest removing it. It's not required. It doesn't prohibit us from using a consultant. It's not necessary to be there. Nobody reads these policies. So contrary to Mrs. Eshelman, I don't
do.
believe it makes a difference. Well, you were suggesting that for the public. I'm suggesting they don't read them. So.
But I want it to be there if they choose to.
Okay. Is everyone in broad agreement other than that paragraph, and then we can just focus the discussion on that last paragraph? Okay, does anyone else have any thoughts for or against leaving some, all, or none of the consultant's paragraph?
I'm good with just removing it. I think it there again, just gets a little too detailed.
I think I agree as well that I'm comfortable removing it. I do appreciate the public education side of it, but simplicity, I think, and clarity is important in policy. So I think just if we're already doing it, we're following the law, then I don't know that it needs to be there.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm okay with removing it. I read through that, I get confused every time I read it. It could lead to more problems than aid, I think.
All right, then it sounds like the consensus is to advance the policy for first reading, removing the paragraph that says consultants. So that's what we'll do. We'll advance it to first reading. All right,
So if you don't mind, if 620, 621, and 623 is strictly name change information. It's all part of the revision process. As I shared, we're updating all our policies. The business side of the house went through this, did not see any other changes that they needed to recommend outside of updating some naming pieces. Those are the only changes on those policies.
Okay, so 620, 621, and 623 are simply changing business administrator to CFO. Any comments or questions about any of them? All right, seeing none, we'll advance all three of them to second reading. And then I guess that leaves us 622, the GASB policy.
So there is a large highlights section in the middle that came out of the business office. Both Tanner and Lydia, who work in our business office, are former auditors. They wanted this policy, these adjustments in here to make it a little easier on the audit side of things. We did talk about the $5,000 limit, which was previously in there and is being reintroduced in that paragraph. That is a very standard limit, but it is certainly something that the board can choose to adjust if they do. But that's a pretty much standard limit. We also didn't have anything about the bottom paragraph there. We didn't have anything about the SBIT, that we don't have anything in there at all. So it made subscriptions. They had to audit each individual subscription. Now they can audit all the subscriptions together. At the end of the day, Lydia best explained it to me as it cleans up the auditing process for the business office. And that's the reason for the change.
Thank you, Dr. Musser. Questions or comments about 622?
I support those additions. I mean, the 5,000 is higher than what we have as a limit, but I think it's appropriate for a district this size.
Any other questions? Mr. Donato?
The only change I make is the 5,000, the bottom of that, you have a little box there instead of,
Yeah, I saw that come through the drafting. We'll get that.
otherwise.
Good catch.
I'm good with it.
My only question was if 5,000 is too low. I mean, because given the scope of our enterprise, we buy a lot of things for $5,000 that aren't really capital assets. But
I don't think it's too low. I mean, we're at 1,000 and we're a pretty big organization as well. So, I mean, that's even 4,000 more than where we are. And if it's under 1,000, we put it in operations. So anything under 5,000 is going to hit operations. I think it's just a matter of preference as much as anything.
I don't feel strongly about this at all. I'm
yeah.
just looking to avoid administrative minutia.
Well, I think they would just capitalize it. It
Yeah.
doesn't really, it's just a defining place that says it's going in operations or it's going to end
Right.
up capitalized and potentially depreciated
Yeah.
over time. It's semantics, I guess. So I don't feel strongly either. I'm just taking their word for what they have and think it's okay.
Just based on what's above in the next paragraph as to what are the capital assets?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least for technology, it is a very good dividing line between not disposable things, but things we go through regularly and things we keep for multiple years.
So you think 5,000 is a good level?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or comments? All right, since this is a substantial change, we will go ahead and move it to first reading.
The last policy for discussion tonight is a retirement 624 medical access. For those of you that have been on the board for a long time, we had this policy back when we were billing for medical access. Basically what that is, if students are being provided, we use speech services or OT services, the district can then bill back insurance and can recoup some of that money. The district's not currently in the process of using this policy. So we would like to retire this policy, but we do want to bring this policy back as we are exploring different revenue generations under medical access and what we can bill for without adding too much overhead, that the billing is just supporting the overhead piece, if that makes sense. So right now, not a policy we're using. We would like to retire, but you will be seeing it probably in the next year.
Just as a technical point, would we be better off simply suspending it? That way we could reinstate it immediately without having, if we retire it, it probably has to come back.
It does, but I think some of the changes because of the timing are going to be substantive enough. We might want to go through that
Okay.
process. That's my thought at this point, unless the
Okay.
board feels differently.
Any questions or comments about retiring policy 624? All right, I think we can probably move that right to second reading and just vote on retiring it. All right, that concludes the policy part. There is an item of new business, a resolution, which I understand is advanced by Mrs. Esselman or Mr. Bomerski.
Yep, Mrs.
So-
Eshelman asked for this to be brought to the board for discussion. So it's there for you to read, Mrs. Eshelman. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, just like last year, I did not use AI to craft this. I wish I would have now looking back, but urging the General Assembly and the governor to fairly fund public schools and making it specific to Hempfield School District and what we used the funds for last year and that what we plan to use the funds for. I'm happy to read it out loud if you'd want me to. I don't know how many people read it ahead of the meeting. Any thoughts?
I think we all have a copy of it in our agenda.
Okay.
So if anyone wants it read out loud, but I think we can all see what's here.
Okay, and then we can vote on it at the May regular meeting.
This is the PSPA format that they recommended to pass this resolution. I mean, I know you've added things to it, but that's.
Yes, in the format that I used last year. I added in, like I said, specifics about Hempfield. I gave an overview of the background in the first paragraph there. I also, because some of us attended the superintendent information sharing portion of the IU13 legislative discussion this year, which I hadn't been a part of before because it happens every 2 years. I added in that information to show that it's not just coming from, say, one entity, but many entities. And then just basics about the whole budget, and then again, specific to Hempfield.
My only question is, I do just want to make sure if we're signing this, the information's accurate. I don't know what maybe you added, where you got it, but the 8,000 for tuition, I understand, because that's just a request, but maybe the savings of $1 million versus, the proposed numbers, some of the numbers and the accuracy. I just want to make sure we're going to sign it and send it in. There's accuracy and it's been reviewed.
And I worked with the administration and checked with the business office on those and the things that we used the funds for last year and plans to use them for in the future. I also basically got from the
Based on
administration.
what was shared with me, and then the $1 million savings, it's actually a little bit more, but it really just depends on specific number you're using in terms of the charter school. If we did have an $8,000 cap at the state, we would see a savings of at least $1 million based on our current.
Current, yes.
Cyber students.
I did have a number in there before based on before they got updated numbers, but we wanted to make sure it was as current as possible.
So maybe
What
just
is
put,
the latest status? We had the lawsuit and remember all that business, and is that basically, I thought they
It's
had to
embarrassing.
resolve something.
yep.
I
So the
thought they had to
lawsuit-
resolve something.
So with where you're going, Mr. Maris, the lawsuit that was the judge ruled but did not say what the remedy would be and charged the General Assembly, the governor, other entities to come up with a solution. So that's where the Commission for Public School Funding came about. They did hearings all across the state, and then 2 reports were produced. I think we presented on that last year. We were fortunate to receive adequacy dollars, and those adequacy dollars of $680,000 a year over a 7-year period is the kind of quote amount that we have been shortchanged over the years in terms of fair funding, if you will, based on the formula that was developed. So that was issued last year, that was agreed upon, and it was a rough battle in Harrisburg in terms of the budget, but those funds were included. As we move into this year's budget cycle, those dollars were rolled into what was projected for us. What we received last year was rolled into this year's BEF dollars. And because we had already received them, so we do flat funding, and so we included last year's dollars into our budget moving forward. What we did not include was what was being expected in year 2 of those adequacy dollars, so another $680,000. I was at a meeting 2 weeks ago, I believe now, where Representative Cutler and Representative Schweier, who are the chairs of the House Education Committee, Representative Cutler is the Republican minority chair, Representative Schweier is the majority chair. Both of them in the room, sitting side by side, stated that it is almost like a non-starter to tackle the adequacy dollars because that was the unsigned settlement, if you will, for how to adjust for the fair funding because neither side took it back to court. That's them saying that, so I'm feeling optimistic, but we still have to wait and see what's going to happen with the budget at the end of the day in Harrisburg. So we are not budgeting additional revenue for those dollars at this point, unless we get confirmation. I am feeling good based on what I heard from the two of them, but that's the House. The governor proposed it, but the Senate also has to work through that. So we'll see. Both Representative Cutler and Representative Schweier also stated that they feel that the basic ed funding and the special ed funding were low, and they thought it would be a little higher. So they think that's some strategy on the governor's part to drop down that, put some things in maybe that he knows is not going to pass so that others will come back and say, hey, we need to do more for education and switch it.
And some of that is stated in here because I had heard it and read it from multiple entities of like the special education funding being under year after year. So putting that in there as well.
But as far as going by a formula, there's still not an agreement.
So
as
they have
far
the
as-
formula in place. The question is going to be is if they will have the dollars to use from the state and whether they're going to go into the rainy day fund or their reserves to continue funding. That's the big question that Harrisburg has to decide between the General Assembly and the governor.
And year
But-
after year.
But
Year
the
after year.
formula only applies to new money, right?
Two different things. The basic ed formula, any new dollars coming in, that applies to the basic ed side. This other formula that we're talking about for the adequacy dollars was derived
Okay.
through the commission. There is some conversation out there that because there were about 100 and some districts that did not get adequacy dollars, meaning that basically through the study, it appeared that they have been receiving enough funds or fair funds over the years. They don't believe so. So some of the representatives from their areas are starting to say, should we go back and look at the formula to balance it out to see that all districts get something else? And maybe we would end up getting a little bit less on the adequacy. We'll see.
And then this is just our way of advocating for Hempfield specifically.
Could we put something like, these are these year's numbers or best of our ability or budgetary numbers or something like that to kind of Mr. Walby's point of, if they're not completely accurate or numbers, just put some verbiage in there.
I mean, these were,
But
I mean,
if-
do you just
if-
want me to round them?
No, I'm saying like, so they look at these numbers next year. Well, then we come back, our budget numbers are different. So maybe just put a statement, these are current year's numbers.
And
I
I
mean,
think, Mr.
I can put
Barber, that
language,
comment
we
goes-
can work on putting language of the current. I think I tried to do that. I mean, in giving the historic from last year and then making it specific to this year, but maybe Mr. Bremerski and the administration can help put in
Yep.
very specific to this year.
Yep, so it says this would result in an annual net savings of approximately $1 million for the Hempfield School District alone. You just take out a loan and just say, based on current enrollment numbers as well as our current budget, something like that.
Yeah, I like that.
I think,
Thank
Mr. Garber, I share that concern. I think much of what the resolution says are things that the board broadly agrees with. I have some concern with making explicit budgetary commitments outside the budget process. And that's what I view this as being. So I think if this resolution is expressing broad goals, broad areas where a majority of the board can find consensus, there's no harm in doing it. But I would be reluctant to endorse a resolution that makes budgetary commitments or budgetary demands outside of the normal budget process. And I think particularly paragraphs 1 2 and 3 may do that.
Mike, can you put it back up there? Thank you.
Well, I think that's where maybe the concepts make sense. And if we can adjust to Mr. Garber's point, your point, and maybe mine a little bit tied into that too. We just want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for some kind of situation by being
Yeah.
too direct and too specific.
Where we have a tension between a resolution and a budget document, I would rather, in my opinion, it makes more sense to have budget discussions as part of the budget process.
So not have specific dollars, but allocate increases like the wording of that, like down at the.
I think you can use generalizations to say we would expect to potentially spend or potentially spend this much, but just not commit to
Right.
direct dollars that
Right.
that look
We-
like
we may
maybe
not
are
want
exact.
to- We may not want to put adequacy funding towards full-day kindergarten or ELA or STEAL. We may want to do something else with it, but that's a budget process.
Could you change the word would to could?
Could.
Or we could just take it out.
I think the purpose in doing that was that is what I heard through all of these things I attended. That's what people were looking for in order to do their job in the General Assembly. They were wondering, what did you use these funds for? What are your future plans to use these funds for? Because why would we give money if there is no plan, if there is no purpose for it? Okay. All right.
I think you can accomplish both by just maybe tweaking that a little bit, but it's my thought.
Yeah, I don't think it needs a huge wholesale change. I think just massaging language, so it's a little more general, a little more less committed to exact stuff.
I mean, what is the purpose of the resolution? The purpose of the resolution is to encourage the General Assembly to fulfill their constitutional mandate and fund public education. I'm all for it. If the purpose of this resolution is to advance different priorities about which the board may not be of one mind, this, in my opinion, isn't the place to do. That's all I'm saying.
I think the priorities just, again, would explain and what people had been asking for, like what was it used for, what will it be used for? But I'd be happy to work with the administration to.
Language can be adjusted. The piece just to be mindful of adequacy dollars. There's very specific things that the state allows you to use those dollars for. While we may be attributing currently general fund dollars to that, adequacy dollars comes in, those general fund dollars go elsewhere.
Yeah.
But
And the same would be with the special education funding. If we get
correct.
200,000
So-
more, we can't decide to put that in.
If there's interest to do this, I certainly can work with Mrs. Eshelman and keep going and have something for you to look at for the May meeting.
If I might suggest, perhaps Mrs. Esselman and Mr. Walgamuth, because he's the chair of the finance committee and there are finance overlays to this. I'm not trying to.
I mean, I'm comfortable, Mr. Keener, with the administration, with Mrs. Hall and Mr. Bremersky working with Mrs. Eshelman on it. I agree with your sentiment, though, Mr. Keener, that if our intention is to ask for additional dollars, I'm supportive of that. If this has a motivation to guide where we're spending our money, it's misguided, and I wouldn't support it under that premise if that's the rationale behind it. But I will support it if it's encouragement for them to fund school districts at an appropriate level.
Would it be appropriate to let them know what we used it for last year as a?
I think in general, it's appropriate to give them numbers. I think you're right that they wouldn't, if you're not going to give them any information, they're just going to laugh you out of the room. So you've got to be a little bit specific about where some of those dollars are going, but I think there's a fine line there, and I don't think you want to get into the business of committing dollars to certain buckets, to Mr. Keener's point and Mr. Garber's point. If you can find that sweet spot, I'm fine with it. We did it the other year and I think we figured it out. So it was something similar, I believe, last year.
Yep. So it just made some changes. So I'll send it out. Done.
Can't hurt to ask if we're doing it in the right way.
Yep. All done.
Any other questions or comments about the draft resolution? All right, is there a motion to adjourn to executive session?
Motion. Can we do it right here since everyone's?
That's fine with me. Yeah,
It's going to be a very brief update.
Yeah,
Well, we
there's a motion, is there a second? Is there a second?
Let's finish the
We're
meeting.
not adjourned yet.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
You're adjourned.